I came on a massive wooden raft, drifting somewhere in the middle of an open ocean, my skull throbbing like someone had used it as a drum. Water in every direction as far as the eye could see. Scattered across the raft around me were the 42 girls from my art elective, along with our instructor. I was the only male. Before anyone could get their bearings, a disembodied voice rang out simultaneously inside all of our minds. It explained that we had been dropped into an ocean survival simulation with strict rules. Every group was assigned a raft, and every raft had a designated captain. Should the captain perish, the raft would sink, taking everyone with it. We could awaken personal talents, harvest resources from the sea, evolve our raft into a proper vessel, and fend off sea creatures that crawled up after dark. A tidal surge would strike every 7 days, and each month the current would carry us into a new ocean region. The girls were not frightened. They treated the whole thing like some kind of field trip. I pulled up my status panel and discovered I was listed as captain. Fantastic! My death meant everyone's death. No pressure whatsoever. Our instructor, Sarah Vane, took the reins immediately. Composed and razor-sharp, she was the obvious choice. Her talent turned out to be SS rank. Strategic clarity, she could process information and react 3 times faster than any ordinary person. Others began sharing their own talents. When Mira drew an A-rank fortune reading ability, her twin sister Kira received an A-rank combat reflexes skill. One girl manifested an S-rank dragon maiden talent, complete with a dragon egg that would hatch within 10 days. Even the girl who had been mid-shower when this all started that allowed people to breathe beneath the waters had a practical power surface. Untitled. Then the circle of eyes landed on me. I opened my panel and read my talent. SSS rank, sovereign physique. My raw strength increased by 1 point with each passing day, with no ceiling whatsoever. Given enough time, nothing would be able to stop me. But that was only the half of it. A hidden system activated inside my mind, the lineage expansion system. Every time I fathered child, I could designate one ordinary item and convert it into an infinite supply. A single water bottle could become endless water. Forever. A body that grew without limit, paired with a system that generated unlimited resources. I exhaled slowly. This was about as strong a starting hand as I could have imagined. When I explained the system to everyone, I kept the phrasing simple: more heirs, more abundance. I described how having a child with someone would let me convert one item into a limitless source of that resource. Infinite food, water, materials, whatever we needed. The raft fell completely silent. Then chaos erupted. The girls processed it fast. Since I was the only male and also the captain whose survival was everybody's survival, protecting me was not optional. And neither, as it turned out, was helping me activate my ability. The awkwardness was immediate. Faces flushed everywhere. Some girls began half-jokingly nudging their friends about stepping forward first. Even Sarah herself went slightly pink, though I could see her mind was already calculating the strategic value of my power. Nothing was going to happen right away, of course. We had all been ordinary college students less than an hour ago, and the raft had no walls to speak of. I told myself to be patient. When resources dried up enough, the decision would make itself. Mira snapped me back to reality by asking about my captain abilities. Apparently, the word captain floated above my head in gold lettering, effectively a glowing target sign for anything horror what those captain abilities actually did. I could steer the raft, restructure, and expand it, access permissions to the crew. I joked that I could also toss anyone who disobeyed me. Several girls actually took a nervous step back. Sarah cut through the noise and got everyone focused. She pointed out that dangerous creatures would emerge after sunset, so building walls was the first priority. Food and fresh water were equally urgent. Along the raft's perimeter, we found over 40 fishing rods, our starter equipment. I grabbed one and dropped the line in. The others followed, and soon all of us were ringing the raft's edge, trying to pull up our first meal in this new world. We fished for over an hour and caught almost nothing. The girls were worn out and beginning to complain. The sea was even tighter with its resources than I had expected. One girl reeled in a waterlogged crate containing a single piece of stale bread. Then I remembered Myra's fortune reading ability and asked her to use it so we could gauge our luck for the day. She closed her eyes. A bamboo tube materialized in her palm. She shook it and whispered something about drawing a good one, which the other girls immediately twisted in a teasing aimed at me. Mira went scarlet. Her twin Kira stepped in, silenced the laughter, and Mira tipped the tube. One stick slid out. It read, "Great misfortune." The back of the stick warned us to finish a shelter before dark or face something terrible. The laughter died in an instant. Everyone sobered up. Sarah took command, assigned fishing duties, and gave a firm order. We needed wood for a shelter before the sun went down. Nobody complained. Everyone fished in silence and with genuine urgency. By dusk, after an entire afternoon of combined effort from 43 people, we had pulled up 112 wooden planks, 5 bottles of water, and 15 compressed bread rations. Not much, but 112 planks was barely enough. I walked to the pile and issued the build command: a cabin, 5 meters long for wide, too tall. The planks rose into the air on their own and locked together like a game interface constructing itself. Within seconds, we had 4 walls, a roof, and a door. The girls were wide-eyed. I was not relaxed. The sun was dropping fast, and darkness was close. I told everyone to get inside. No one was to step out tonight. The cabin was suffocating 43 people crammed into roughly 20 square meters, packed shoulder to shoulder. The girls pushed me to the center, insisting the captain needed to remain safe. Sarah was on my left, Mira on my right, and the dragon girl directly behind me. The combined warmth and scent of everyone pressed together with a lot to absorb. I distributed our supplies, 5 water bottles and 15 bread rations. Sarah managed it. Everyone received 1 small sip and roughly a third of a single bread piece. The girls were disciplined and took no more than their share. When 2 of them simultaneously held out the last 2 bottles toward me with hopeful expressions, I took both quickly and handed one to Sarah, drinking from the other myself. Crisis averted. I couldn't resist teasing Mira a little by holding the last bread piece close to her lips. She froze, staring at me with wide eyes. The cabin erupted. Then Kira snatched it from my fingers and stuffed it into her sister's mouth before shooting me a sharp glare. Everyone laughed, and the dread from earlier loosened slightly. Exhaustion started winning. People began leaning on one another and drifting off. I was nearly asleep myself when something slammed the raft from below with enormous force. The whole platform lurched and shook. Everyone was thrown awake, screaming and colliding in the dark. Outside, the storm was violent, wind shrieking, waves hammering the walls. Then one girl screamed and pointed. Through a gap in the wooden planks, a massive eye, blood red, the size of a basketball, pupil vertical. It was scanning the cabin methodically, studying every face inside like we were listed on a menu. Beside it, a wide mouth stretched open into a long, soundless grin. The silence lasted 1 second. Then it broke completely. Girls screaming, sobbing, throwing themselves against one another in blind panic. Even Sarah grabbed my arm hard enough that her nails nearly drew blood. Kira drew a dagger and planted herself in front of Mira, shaking but not yielding. Everyone surged toward me. I was the captain, the only male, and right now the only fixed point they could reach. I was getting crushed from every direction, yet somehow I felt absolutely calm. Maybe the sovereign physique was already beginning to affect my mind. I stared past the crowd at that red. I still pressed against the wall. The creature could not get in. Not yet. But this flimsy raft was not going to hold forever. The rules said a tidal surge every 7 days. If we could not upgrade to a real vessel before then, we were finished. I made the decision right then. Starting tomorrow, we would gather materials as fast as possible and build something that could actually survive what was coming. When light began filtering through the gaps in the planks, I knew we had made it through. I was first to rise. As I stretched, a warm current moved through my entire body. The sovereign physique had delivered its daily increment. 1 point of strength, just for staying alive one more day. Yesterday, I had been a regular student. This morning, I felt as though I could bend steel. I pushed the door open and let the sea air in. Everyone looked exhausted, but alive. Sarah pulled herself together fast and reminded the group that the creature from last night proved we had no time to waste. We held a morning meeting on deck. I laid out the 3 priorities: food and water first, then raft upgrades. Level 2, improved stability. Level 5, converted to a real ship, and finally, Everyone needed to practice using their talents. The mood lifted as people began demonstrating their abilities. Bao Lin, the bubble girl, went first. She puffed her cheeks and exhaled a pink bubble that swelled to the size of a person. One brave girl poked it and got pulled inside, rising into the air. She loved it for about 3 seconds, then panicked about the height. When Bao popped it, the girl dropped flat on her back. Everyone laughed. Silly looking, but for suppression or underwater work, genuinely powerful. Then Zara Fen, the S-rank dragon maiden, held up her glowing egg and told the group it needed body heat to hatch. She settled cross-legged with the egg cradled in her lap. One girl teased her about it, and Zara replied calmly that once her dragon emerged, it would go after that girl first. Laughter again. Even Sarah smiled briefly, then glanced at me with an expression that was slightly softer than her usual precision. Once the exhibition was over, I got everyone back to fishing. Zara and Bao stayed to practice their skills. The rest grabbed rods and lined the raft's edge. Our objective was straightforward: survive tonight and eat an actual meal. The midday heat was punishing. The raft baked. I asked Mira to use her fortune reading again. She shook the tube and drew a stick. Small luck, not impressive, but better than yesterday's catastrophe. And it held. Not long after, my rod bowed sharply. I pulled with everything I had and hauled up a black iron treasure chest encrusted with seaweed. The girls went wild. Inside, 50 wooden planks, 2 pieces of stale bread, and the genuine prize, a blueprint for a basic workbench. Sarah's eyes lit up at once. A workbench meant we could actually build things. I registered the blueprint, fed in wood and nails, and a proper workbench appeared on deck, hammers and saws arranged neatly beside it. The crafting list was promising: an iron fire pit, an iron cooking pot, a water purification unit. Real survival equipment. Then reality intervened. We had no iron, no plastic, no charcoal. The blueprint was useless without raw materials. I told everyone not to surrender. If we could fish up a blueprint, we could fish up what we needed to use it. We kept at it all afternoon. By sunset, over 300 wooden planks, which was good. But food remained desperate. 43 people had caught 3 small fish and 5 packets of compressed biscuits. Nowhere close to enough. As darkness arrived, stomachs were growling all around. Hunger was becoming harder to manage than the fear of monsters. Night 2. The cabin was larger now with the extra planks, so at least we were not stacked on top of each other. I built a small separate room in the corner of the captain's quarters with a curtain as a door. I split the food into 43 portions. Each person received a sip of water and a biscuit roughly the width of a finger. Not enough. You could hear it in the silence. Then someone whispered, "If only we had endless water." Every pair of eyes turned toward me. No teasing anymore, just raw, undisguised need. They all understood what I could provide and what providing it required. I felt the full weight of that stare. I stood, told everyone to sleep, and stepped behind my curtain. This decision had to come from them. I was not going to force it. Outside, something was scratching at the cabin walls again. That slow, rhythmic scraping, layered under the silence, made the air heavier than it needed to be. I lay in the dark, listening to the twins. Kira complaining about thirst, Mira murmuring about hunger. Everyone was suffering. Kira complaining about thirst, Mira murmuring about hunger. Everyone was suffering. I waited, not just for survival. I understood something more clearly than I could explain. Unlimited supplies were not only about food and water. They were the foundation of real authority. If I controlled that, these girls would follow me in every sense, not merely tolerate me as a figurehead. Then the curtain shifted. A hand lifted its edge. A familiar scent reached me. It was Sarah, my instructor, the woman who was always perfectly measured and in control, standing there with color in her cheeks and her lip caught between her teeth. She said she wanted to discuss the supply situation. We both understood this was not about discussing anything. I reached out, took her wrist, and drew her gently inside. "If we're going to speak seriously," I said quietly, "you should come in." That shows genuine intent. The moment was cut short before it could become anything more. A massive impact shook the entire raft. Sarah was thrown against the wall, startled back into herself, and retreated through the curtain, saying she was not ready yet. I lay staring at the ceiling. Those creatures outside had made an enemy of me tonight. The next morning arrived grim. Nobody had slept properly. The night had been too loud and too long. Sarah avoided my eyes when I emerged, her face slightly flushed. I asked Mira to run her fortune reading again. Half asleep, she shook the tube, and a stick fell in her palm. Her eyes went wide immediately. Great fortune. The description on the back was borderline absurd. Something about finding treasure with every cast and encountering a worthy companion if you turned right. It even managed to joke about the absence of traffic lights at sea. But the luck was real. The entire morning was extraordinary. Fish after fish, box after box. The sea simply kept delivering. Metal pieces, plastic, charcoal, bottled water, bread rations, large fish. By midday, we had accumulated more than the previous 2 days combined. 500 wooden planks, 25 metal pieces, 32 pieces of plastic, 10 charcoal units, 24 water bottles, 30 bread rations, and 17 fish. Everyone finally ate a proper amount, half a bottle of water and a substantial piece of bread each. I moved to the workbench and constructed an iron fire pit and cooking pot. The girls lost their composure entirely. Some of them cleaned the fish clumsily but with fierce concentration, then boiled everything in seawater, no seasoning. Nothing, but after 3 days of dry bread, the smell of hot fish broth drifting across the raft was the finest thing any of us had encountered. Everyone gathered around the pot like starving birds. I sat apart and reviewed my panel. Partners, 0. Children, 0. Item conversions, 0. Constitution had climbed to 13 from the sovereign physique, encouraging. But here was the irony. With this much food and supplies rolling in, nobody felt desperate enough to help me activate my lineage system. The better our luck, the less urgently anyone needed what only I could provide. I let out a slow breath. What a strange problem to carry. After the fish broth, energy returned. The lucky streak continued through the afternoon and into the evening. While the girls fished, I examined the captain's panel and found a key detail I had missed. We were drifting in a zone called the Shroud Current Sea. That explained everything. This region had drastically reduced resource drop rates and doubled monster spawns after dark. We had been playing the hardest starting scenario from the beginning. We had 27 more days before the current carried us to a new region. When I shared this, the mood sagged again. A month of intensified monster attacks. But I redirected quickly. I pulled up the level 2 upgrade requirements. 800 planks, 50 iron blocks, 50 plastic. With today's haul, we had a genuine shot at hitting that before nightfall. Everyone returned to their rods with renewed energy. Then Sarah pulled me into the captain's quarters. She apologized for retreating the night before. She told me, with a face as red as I'd ever seen it, that she had never been in that kind of situation before, and asked if we could move carefully and build trust first. She told me to stop calling her instructor Sarah and just use her given name Sarah, or simply Vane if I preferred. Every frustration I had been carrying dissolved. She was being honest, and I genuinely respected that. I told her I understood and would not push her, but I could not resist probing slightly. I asked if I could examine her leg. She froze, went even redder, but quietly said yes. I had her sit on the wooden bunk and began massaging her lower calf. She tensed and asked what I was doing. I told her she had been on her feet for 3 days straight. She could afford to relax for a moment. That was when Zara burst through the curtain to announce we had enough materials to upgrade. She saw us, went completely still, stammered, "I didn't see anything," and fled. Sarah turned crimson, pulled her leg away, and rushed out after her. I followed, caught up with Zara, and pinched her cheek, telling her that if she ever interrupted me at that particular moment again, her dragon egg would become dinner. But the news itself was real. 821 planks, 55 iron blocks, 63 plastic. More than enough. I applied the upgrade. The raft thickened. The deck expanded by a quarter. A half-meter railing appeared around the edge. And most importantly, communication channels unlocked. One for our local sea region, one for the entire world. The regional channel was full of misery. Everyone in the Shroud Current Sea was barely clinging on, just like us. Our extraordinary day had been Myra's fortune reading at work. The global channel was far more interesting. Some groups were already at level 3 or 4. Different sea regions produced different resources. At level 3, a trading market would open, and that meant my lineage system's unlimited conversions could make us wealthier than anyone else on the water. Then an announcement shook the global channel. At level 5, rafts converted to ships. Doing so required a storm core obtained by surviving the first tidal surge arriving in 4 days. The first captain to reach ship level worldwide would receive 3 epic treasure chests containing purple tier gear. Everyone looked at me and Sarah. We all knew what had to happen. My system needed to be activated. Unlimited resources to trade. Unlimited leverage to upgrade. The math was clear. That night, Sarah came to me. She had made her decision. She said she was prepared to give herself to me for the sake of everyone's future. She knelt down, held my eyes, and asked me to be gentle. I could see this was not an impulsive choice, it was a sacrifice, thought through and made deliberately. I respected her even more for it. But just as things were finally about to proceed, a blinding explosion of light detonated at the far end of the raft. Zara's dragon egg was hatching ahead of schedule. Golden lightning and crimson flames erupted from the cracking shell, and whatever was lurking outside shrieked and pulled back from the raft entirely. Sarah and I ran out. Something was wrong. Zara's energy was being drained directly into the egg. Her face was chalk white and twisted in pain. Some girls wanted to intervene and stop it. I told them no. This was instinct. The egg was hatching early because it sensed the approaching tidal surge. Interrupting the process now could shatter her talent entirely. Instead, I ordered everyone to feed Zara food and water while others formed a protective ring around her. Then I sat in front of her, took both her hands, and used my sovereign physique to push life energy directly into her through what the system classified as an energy transfer. It converted my raw strength into vital force. It cost me considerably, but the anguish gradually eased from Zara's face. We kept watch through the entire night as golden light poured upward into the sky, and something ancient and powerful began its entrance into the world. By morning, the egg finally cracked open, not with any great explosion, just a quiet glow of red and violet light. Out drifted a creature no bigger than my open palm, wrapped in scales the color of embers and gold, with enormous golden eyes, tiny curling horns, and a tail tipped with a living golden flame. Impossibly small, impossibly beautiful. It made a soft, high sound and pressed its face against Zara's cheek. She was completely spent, but managed to smile when she saw it. Then the little creature noticed me. I must have looked terrible, skin gone gray, dark circles, visibly depleted from a night of energy transfer. The dragon shot from Zara's arms into mine like a thrown coal, curled against my chest, and began licking my chin insistently, behaving entirely as though I were its other parent, and it was terrified I might not survive the morning. That broke everyone. Zara rushed over in tears, saying it was all her fault. Half the girls followed, pressing in from every direction until I was being crushed by 40 people who meant well. Sarah had to physically push people back before I ran out of air. I checked my panel. Constitution had fallen from 13 all the way down to 9. The energy transfer had taken a serious toll. But then I noticed something new. I had gained a secondary talent, Dragon Warrior S rank, because I had channeled Sovereign Physique energy directly into the egg during hatching. The dragon had formed a soul bond with me, alongside Zara. I could now merge with it to become a Dragon Warrior enhanced strength, speed, and elemental resistance. All dragon-type creatures would register me as a natural ally. The system had also labeled me Dragon Father, which I had complicated feelings about. Additionally, the Sovereign Physique had developed a new property. Consuming high-quality, energy-dense food could accelerate my strength growth. Plain bread and water would not be sufficient, but premium food could supercharge my development. Zara pushed everyone else aside and personally brought me water and bread, insisting she would make it up to me. She placed the little dragon back in my arms, and it gently licked my cheek. I told her I was fine. She smiled through her tears in a way that suggested she did not believe me at all, but was choosing to trust me anyway. After some rest, I felt my recovery kicking and the Sovereign Physique healed faster than normal, even with Constitution drained. When Mira drew her daily fortune, the result was good luck again. That girl had become our secret weapon. I laid out the plan. 3 days until the tidal surge. I wanted to be at level 4 before it arrived. The material requirements were steep. Level 3 needed 1,500 planks, 100 iron, 100 plastic. Level 4 demanded even more. The numbers frightened people, but I reminded them that with fortune on our side, anything was achievable. I had the girls craft wooden stools so they could sit while fishing instead of standing all day. A small thing, but it lifted everyone's spirits. Small gestures carry further than they ought to. At midday, we had fish broth again. The mood was light. People joked about how wrecked I looked after the previous night's ordeal, which made Mira go scarlet. I pretended not to notice. Then Sarah came to me quietly. She took my hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was firm. She told me we could not wait any longer. Her plan matched mine exactly. Open the trading market at level 3, activate my lineage system to generate unlimited conversions, then push to level 4 or even 5 before the surge hit. That was the only path to those epic treasure chests. I told her she was brilliant. She rolled her eyes with color in her cheeks. Nearby, some girls were murmuring about us. Mira sat apart with her fishing rod, expression subdued. Her sister Kira was nudging her, telling her to act before it was too late. Apparently Mira had carried feelings for me for 3 years. I filed that away without knowing what to do with it. By evening we had the materials. I upgraded to level 3 and the trading market opened a glowing blue interface displaying weapons, skill manuals, food, and ornamental items from other sea regions. Other groups were trading everything, but we had nothing special to offer yet. Then one girl said it plainly. Once the lineage system activated and I had an unlimited resource, the entire trading market became our personal supply depot. Every pair of eyes drifted toward me, then toward Sarah, then toward the curtain. Tonight had to be the night. Everyone understood that. They settled quietly into their spots, but no one actually slept. All eyes kept drifting to my curtain. I took Sarah's hand and led her inside. The curtain fell closed behind us. It was a long night, but when Moming arrived, I checked my panel and stopped. Not pregnant. I could not believe it. After everything, I sat with that for a long moment. Then Sarah stirred and looked at me with quiet certainty. She said we would try again, and the way she said it made the word we feel like something solid. After the tidal surge passed and the immediate chaos settled, I confirmed what I had suspected for a little while. I made the announcement before I could think better of it, called the children our hope pair, said it a little too loudly, and several girls caught it before I could dial it back. So I went ahead and told everyone. I pulled Sarah into my arms and told the entire crew. Instructor Vane is carrying twins. The silence lasted roughly 2 seconds. Then the raft erupted. The girls swarmed Sarah as though she had suddenly become the most fragile and precious thing in existence, which, given the implications, was not entirely inaccurate. They made her sit down, offered to fish on her behalf, brought her water. Sarah kept insisting she was perfectly fine. Nobody listened. Zara stood off to one side with her dragon, expression a little hollow, watching Sarah being treated like royalty. She glanced at me, then back at Sarah. The little dragon tilted its head at her, confused by the sudden quiet. Mira was similarly withdrawn in the corner, head low. Her sister Kira nudged her, telling her that if she did not make a move soon it would be too late. Mira just went red and told her stop. I watched all of it. Sarah's footing on the raft was now unassailable, but my mind had already moved to the next concern, making sure she was eating properly. Those two were not going to fall behind before they even began. With 1 day remaining before the surge, I used all 10 daily trades to acquire materials for the remaining crossbows. All 42 girls were now armed. Watching them hold their weapons with something approaching confidence felt genuinely good. Then luck intervened again. Bao fished up a blue skill manual. Power Surge Strike, 60 seconds of charging triples the damage of the next melee hit. Everyone agreed it belonged to me. I registered it instantly. A second girl pulled up a full set of green tier iron armor helmet, chest, leg guards, boots. I handed it directly to Rona Vex. She had the strongman talent, which made her our natural frontline, and armor like that belonged on her. She was so pleased she bear hugged me in front of everyone without warning. That evening, I opened the global channel. The surge was hours away, and the conversation was frantic. Drake Orland was loudly broadcasting his level 4 raft. Groups in the standard sea zones were showing off their defenses. Meanwhile, everyone stuck in the Shroud Current Sea was describing broken rafts and empty stomachs. Our girls laughed and told me how lucky they were to have ended up on my raft. A few of the bolder ones kissed me on the cheek before I could react. I looked at Sarah helplessly. She simply smiled with an expression that said, "You built this situation yourself." Then the system announcement dropped. Global title surge scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. First group to upgrade to ship status receives 3 epic chests. This was our last night before everything changed. After the evening meal, the girls requested water for bathing. They had not been able to wash properly in nearly a week. I could not say no. I stacked hundreds of water bottles near the shower section we had built from spare planks. They went in groups of 10. 3 hours. The sound from inside splashing, laughing, relentless teasing were genuinely difficult to sit through. I remained outside, trying to compose myself. My concentration failed repeatedly. When the final group emerged, I walked over to Sarah and drew her toward the captain's quarters in full view of everyone's horrified expressions. She protested that we had a battle in the morning. I told her that was exactly why preparation tonight was non-negotiable. The curtain fell. Outside, I could hear varying degrees of outrage and sympathy directed at Instructor Vane. I had my reasons. Tomorrow could alter everything, and I was not going to face a title surge having held anything in reserve. After another night with Sarah, I was feeling composed until the entire raft began convulsing violently at midnight. Creatures were scaling the deck from every direction simultaneously. Then the system voice materialized in my mind with cheerful efficiency, informing me that the tidal surge in the Shroud Current Sea occurred at midnight rather than 9 a.m. like every other region. Wonderful. Advance notice would have been appreciated. The rules were clear. Survive 1 hour. Killing monsters shortened the countdown. Failing to engage allowed the waves to build until they destroyed the raft. Sarah took command at once. She positioned everyone with precise efficiency. Rona, in her iron armor, became a human fortification at the front. Kira moved in sharp bursts, her dagger finding gaps between creatures from behind. Bao generated enormous bubbles that intercepted anything airborne. And Zara merged with her dragon, both of them blazing gold, cutting through monster formations with lightning and flame. Something had shifted in Zara's talents since my soul bond with the dragon. The S-rank ability had evolved. Previously, only Zara could fight alongside the creature. Now either of us could partner with it independently. Our combat potential had doubled. The rest of the girls maintained crossbow fire on anything that moved. Sarah used strategic clarity to call weak points on the larger enemies in real time. When a starfish creature the span of a small building dragged itself onto the deck, Sarah identified its vulnerability as single eye buried in the folds of its underbelly. I charged Power Surge Strike for a full minute, then launched myself at it. A 10-meter blade arc split it cleanly in half. That carved 3 minutes from the countdown. The final 5 minutes were the most brutal. Every creature remaining converged in a simultaneous charge, a last, irrational wave of destruction. The waves outside reached extraordinary heights. I screamed for everyone to hold position. Then the timer reached 0. A long, drawn wail echoed across the water and cut off. Wind dropped. Waves settled. Creatures retreated below the surface. We had survived. That glowing blue crystal drifted across the deck toward me, the storm core. I combined it with materials, burned the last of my daily trades, and filled the remaining gaps with monster drops. I initiated the upgrade. White light consumed the entire raft. When it receded, we were standing on an actual ship. Railings. A lookout tower rising from the center. The system broadcast it globally. First captain worldwide to survive the surge and upgrade to ship class. 3 epic chests to be delivered at 10 a.m. I stood there exhausted, blood-streaked, barely upright, and let the satisfaction settle over me. We had done it. First place in the entire world. When the global announcement went out at 10 in the morning, the world channel collapsed under the weight of responses. Nobody could believe that the top 3 spots had all come from the Shroud Current Sea, the region everyone agreed was the harshest, most resource-starved starting zone available. Drake Orlin and the other heavy favorites from the Standard Sea had spent days preparing, only to discover they had been working on the wrong schedule. Our surge hit 9 hours early. We completed the event before theirs had even begun. Before opening the chests, I had Mira draw her fortune. Great luck, of course. The first epic chest contained a world sea chart precise locations, navigation routes, resource nodes, and island markers across all 4 major sea zones. It was priceless. No more drifting. We could actually go where we chose. And most critically, it meant we could leave the shroud current sea. The second chest held an epic skill manual. Tide Commanders, a summoning ability that called a standing army of armored sea creatures to fight on your behalf. It required 100 points of spirit power to learn. My spirit was at 40. But Sarah's SS rank strategic clarity had tripled her mental capacity to over 300. The ability was designed for her. She registered it and summoned immediately. Over 300 armored shrimp and crab warriors burst from the sea surface and arrayed themselves around our ship in perfect formation. The girls screamed with excitement. Our combat capacity had multiplied. The third chest held the grand prize, a complete blueprint for something called the Horizon Citadel, a luxury ocean vessel integrating defense, offense, production systems, and full living quarters. A floating fortress and floating palace in one design. The material costs were insane. 100,000 planks, 10,000 iron blocks, 5 storm cores, and an extensive list of rare resources. Several girls went pale at the numbers. I reminded them, we have unlimited resources. Others could not build this in 100 years. We were different. 1 and use conversion remained, and once Sarah's twins arrived, we would receive 2 more. This ship was possible. It simply required time. I named it our destination, and the crew cheered. Then I looked at the world sea chart, located us, and smiled. With navigation, we did not have to wait a month for the current to move us. We could leave whenever we chose. I told everyone to set aside the grand blueprint for now. It would be built 1 stage at a time. Our immediate problem was straightforward. Get out of the shroud current sea. I spread the chart on deck and walked everyone through the 4 options. The standard sea, the shroud current sea we were already in, the prism sea, and the drift sea. Then I brought Sarah over. Her SS rank ability could extract information from the chart that no one else could perceive. She studied it for a few seconds and said we should set course for the prism sea. Her talent confirmed it was the most stable zone, moderate weather, rich resource density, minimal unprompted monster activity. Its exclusive materials, prism coral and light shard pearls, commanded high prices on the market. And most importantly, the rare, crystallized glass timber needed for the Horizon Citadel blueprint could only be found on the Prism Sea's special islands. That was the end of the discussion. Everyone wanted to leave the dark, creature-dense nightmare we had been surviving in. We had one problem. The ship could not steer. It was still drifting with the current. I checked the workbench and found 2 new blueprints, a basic rudder and a basic sail. Both needed fine timber, which was rare, but the creature drops from the surge battle had supplied enough. The crew worked fast. Within the hour, a metal and timber rudder was installed at the stern, connected by cable to a wheel mounted on the lookout tower. A tall mast rose from the deck's center, and a broad white sail unfurled in the wind with a sound like a held breath being released. I took the wheel. The moment I gripped it, something clicked, not mechanically, but somewhere deeper. The ship extended into my awareness. For the first time, I understood what it meant to be a captain, not just someone assigned the title. I checked the chart. Prism Sea, south-southeast. I turned the wheel, stated our heading to the crew, and the sail filled with wind. The ship pushed forward through the waves and began to move with genuine purpose. Behind us, the shroud current sea began to shrink. Ahead, something brighter was waiting. The girls cheered as we sailed toward the Prism Sea. Our true journey was beginning. After a full day of sailing, the shroud current sea dropped away behind us completely. When morning arrived, everyone went quiet at what they saw ahead. The dark, cold water was gone. In its place, a sea built from 7 colors: red, amber, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, stretched all the way to the horizon. The air was warm and carried a faint sweetness. Dolphins leapt from the rainbow-tinted water to investigate our hull. The girls were overwhelmed. When Mira came to do her daily draw, a faintly glowing pink stick fell from the tube. She took one look at it and went scarlet without saying a word. Kira snatched it and read it aloud. Blossom Omen, a love fortune, describing moonlight and the appearance of someone worthy in one's dreams. The girls immediately decided it was referring to me. I retrieved the stick from Kira before Mira could melt from embarrassment, then pinched her cheek. She froze entirely. I brought her up to the lookout deck telling her I would help her find her footing and take in the view. She was trembling by the time we got to the top, claiming to be afraid of heights. We both understood that was not the reason. I adjusted her posture, hands on her shoulders and back. She could barely draw a breath. Then I noticed her legs shaking and crouched to check on her. She panicked immediately, begging me not to look at her legs. Before the situation could progress any further, Zara's voice cut through from below. She had spotted an island. I pulled out the world's sea chart. It matched the largest landmass in the Prism Sea, Prism Island. Rich in resources, mild conditions, and most critically, crystallized glass timber, one of the key materials for the Horizon Citadel blueprint. The chart also noted unknown energy concentration at the island's center. We sailed for it directly. As we drew close, Sarah deployed her Tide commanders underwater to sweep the shallows ahead. Her report came back clean, only non-aggressive crabs and small lizards near the shore. I selected my landing team, Rona, Kira, and Zara, and we took the small boat to shore. The interior of the island was beautiful in a way that felt like a warning. Bioluminescent trees, flowers that tracked movement, air sweet enough to make the back of your throat ache. We even encountered a small jelly-type creature with pieces of fruit visible inside its translucent body. Harmless, as far as I could tell. I told everyone to leave it alone. Then Kira raised a hand. I sound a woman's voice, faint and broken. We pushed through the undergrowth and found a destroyed raft beside a scatter of wreckage. A woman laying near the debris, her clothing soaked through with blood from a deep claw wound across her abdomen. She was barely conscious. She looked up at us and forced out a warning with what air she had left. Don't eat anything that grows here. The gourmet, it will track you. Then her arm dropped and she went still. Before I could process any of it, something dropped from the canopy directly at Zara's dragon. The dragon vanished in a burst of golden light, dodging by instinct. The attacker landed on the ground, an enormous black mantis, front limbs like paired blades, compound eyes focused with predatory clarity on my dragon. The system tagged it, Gourmet Mantis Elite Class Predator, top of the food chain on this island. It hunted creatures with high energy signatures, and my dragon apparently qualified. It moved without any prelude. I stopped thinking and acted. I threw myself at Zara, taking us both to the ground as those blade arms swept past my head close enough to clip a few strands of hair. Elite class. Level display. Nothing but question marks. This was not a routine encounter. The gourmet mantis was fast. Not fast for a monster, simply fast, with nothing further needing to be added. I gave rapid orders. Rona raised her tower shield to cover Zara and the dragon. Kira dissolved into the shadows. The mantis ignored all of us. It had fixed entirely on the dragon and appeared to regard it as a meal it had already mentally committed to eating. I engaged directly. With Constitution at 21, I was operating well outside any human baseline. I caught its first blade strike head-on. The impact fractured the ground beneath my feet, but I absorbed it and held position. Its raw strength was formidable, not unmanageable, but close. I pushed back and drew a slash across its thorax, barely scratching the shell surface, but proving it could be broken. That was when it stopped testing and committed fully. Both blade arms became a continuous storm of cutting arcs. I was strong enough. I was not fast enough. Sarah rescued me without being present. Her strategic clarity allowed her to analyze the engagement from the ship and relay instructions in real time. She told me to move 3 steps left. I did. A gap opened in the mantis's guard that had not been visible before. I drove the blade into a joint. Green fluid sprayed. Kira appeared behind it for a flanking blow, then the mantis's wing casings opened and a shockwave detonated outward. Kira was launched into a tree trunk and hit hard, coughing blood when she landed. Myra's voice broke from somewhere outside the treeline, calling her sister's name. The mantis ignored all of it and fixed back on the dragon, becoming airborne. I could not close the distance in time. Then a massive pink sphere descended from above and encased the mantis mid-flight. Bao Lin, who had quietly followed the landing team at a distance, waiting, had produced the bubble at the precise moment it mattered most. The mantis thrashed against the inner surface and found no purchase. I drove my blade into the ground and began charging. Zara ordered the dragon to breathe fire into the bubble. The mantis screamed inside a contained inferno. Sarah's voice through our channel. Now. I launched, expelled the full 60-second charge in a single strike downward, and split the mantis from crown to thorax. Green fluid and shell fragments scattered. We had won. Constitution rose to 22. The rewards were significant. An epic tier mantis blade capable of cutting through nearly anything, plus 1 blue-grade treasure chest. The mantis blade could be refined into an epic weapon later. We carried Kira back to the ship. Once she was stable, I opened the blue chest with Myra's hand on it for luck. 3 contents. First, a skill manual called Structural Weakness allows me to identify exploitable weak points on any target during combat. I registered it myself, since everyone agreed my offensive capability was the priority. Second, a blueprint for a second-tier forge that would unlock superior weapon and armor fabrication. Third, a vial of life essence, a golden liquid with restorative properties. I brought the life essence directly to Kira and administered it. 10 seconds. Her fractured ribs reset themselves. She sat upright in genuine shock, fully healed. Mira pressed both hands over her mouth, eyes bright. I looked back at Prism Island with reassessed perspective. That elite mantis had produced exceptional drops, and by Shroud Currency standards, it was arguably a mid-tier threat. There had to be more of them on that island. The calculation was already forming. Prism Island would become our personal hunting ground and material source. That night, the Prism Sea was everything the Shroud Currency had never been: calm water, warm air, a rainbow-colored moon overhead. The girls sat around a fire on deck eating fish broth, telling stories, laughing. It felt like a completely different world. I sat at the stern and turned things over in my mind. The dying woman's warning had weight. These predators targeted high-energy creatures, and every person on our ship qualified. Collecting crystallized glass timber was not going to be a simple matter of walking in with axes. Sarah brought me a bowl of broth and sat beside me. She had already deployed her Tide commanders to patrol the surrounding water at all hours. Nothing would approach the ship without warning. I told her I was glad she was handling things. She said I did not have to carry everything alone. We were a crew. I asked about the pregnancy. She went slightly pink and said she felt nothing out of the ordinary yet. I told her, with complete sincerity, that starting now, she was to remain clear of direct combat. She would command from behind. She was the most irreplaceable person on the ship. A few nearby girls overheard and immediately began teasing. Sarah gave me a look that had no actual threat in it whatsoever. Then I want to check on Mira. The girls had been surrounding her all evening, reprising the love fortune from the morning. When they saw me approaching, they scattered in all directions with identical knowing expressions, leaving Mira alone on the deck looking like something cornered. I crouched beside her and noticed a small cut on her palm, probably a stone during the retreat from the mantis. She had not mentioned it to anyone. I cleaned it with iodine and wrapped a bandage around it. She sat completely still throughout, barely breathing. When I finished and looked up, our eyes met. The colored light of the prism, sea moon, caught in her eyes and held there. I could see everything she had been carrying: the nervousness, the restraint, and something deeper that she had been holding carefully in place for a long time. My chest did something I had not anticipated. I thought of her blossom fortune. Under the moon, a worthy one appears in dreams. I reached up and touched her head gently, told her to come to me immediately if anything happened to her, anything at all. Then I leaned close enough that only she could hear it and told her that tomorrow I would bring her to the lookout deck to see the view properly. Her response was barely audible. Her cheeks were burning. Morning. Constitution reached 23. The sovereign physique meant I needed only a few hours of sleep now. The deck was already busy, girls mending nets, cleaning crossbows, preparing the morning meal. Peaceful even. The kind of normalcy that fell hard-won. I spotted Mira crouched at the ship's rail, dropping scraps of fish to the colorful creatures swimming below. She looked lost in thought. I walked over and reminded her about the lookout deck. She looked at me as though she had half expected me to forget. I took her hand and led her up. The girls below erupted in a chorus of cheering and commentary the moment they saw us. Zara muttered something under her breath while her dragon chirped happily at me over the railing. Up top, the prism sea spread out under the morning sun in every direction, stunning. Mira could not absorb any of it. She was a wreck of nerves. I stood behind her with my arms on the railing on either side and told her to straighten up, breathe, and look at the distance. Then, without announcing it, I activated my structural weakness skill on her. Golden text appeared in my field of view, visible only to me. Status: extremely elevated heart rate, acute anxiety, admiration at maximum threshold. Identified vulnerabilities: complete absence of resistance to close proximity, strong response to verbal praise and gentle contact, entirely helpless against teasing from her twin sister. I absorbed all of this. This ability was not supposed to be a social instrument. But here we were. I ran a hand slowly through her hair and told her she was braver than she understood. I used her full name. She went almost entirely boneless, gripping the railing for structural support. I could see the happiness physically moving through her. She could not contain it. Then something on the island caught my attention. A thin column of blue-gray, smoke rising from deep within the forest canopy. Not mist, not atmospheric haze. A campfire. Deliberate. Someone was on Prism Island. The dying woman had warned about the gourmet plural, implied. So who was making that fire? Surviving strangers, or something we needed to treat as a threat? I had the telescope on me. I extended it and scanned the tree line. Too dense and too distant to see the source clearly. But the smoke was real, and what produced it was not a natural phenomenon. I released Myra's hand. The mood on the deck shifted immediately. The romantic dimension of the morning was over. Prism Island was concealing something significantly larger than beautiful trees and harmless jelly creatures. We needed to move on this sooner than I had planned. After spotting the smoke, I assembled the crew and told them what I had seen. The girls reacted with immediate anxiety. Other people in this world could represent help, or they could represent something more dangerous than the monsters. In my experience so far, the second was more likely. I made the call. We were taking the island. We needed the crystallized glass timber for the Horizon Citadel blueprint, and the elite monsters that produced exceptional drops. Prism Island was going to become ours. Sarah noted that our equipment was still not adequate for that kind of operation. The first landing had nearly cost us Kira and drained Bao Lin completely. Running into additional gourmet mantises without better gear would end badly. I had the blueprint for the second-tier forge, which would unlock substantially superior weapons and armor. The issue was materials. We were roughly 300 iron blocks short. The daily trade limit was exhausted, and iron was scarce on the market. Fishing for it would take too long. Then I reminded the group of something everyone had temporarily forgotten. We still had one in use conversion. The cabin went completely silent. Then it detonated with cheering. I produced a standard iron block and asked Sarah whether she thought this should become our second unlimited resource. She nodded at once, eyes bright. I engaged the system. Golden light wrapped around the block. When I opened the inventory display, the icon showed an infinity marker. Unlimited iron. Belmano. With unlimited water, we had solved survival. With unlimited iron, we had solved equipment. We were no longer merely surviving. We had the foundation to dominate. I upgraded the workbench to the second-tier forge immediately. A proper fabrication station appeared on deck, quenching tanks, grinders, the full complement. The new construction list was extraordinary. Refined iron crossbows, long swords, full armor sets, tower shields, all green tier, all available in unlimited quantity. I organized the workflow. My landing team, Rona, Kira, Zara, Bao, and me would receive full refined iron armor and primary weapons first. Everyone else upgraded to refined iron crossbows. Goal: fully equipped before nightfall. The deck became a production floor. Metal clanging. Sparks arcing. Girls working in shifts without being asked to. I stood at the bow and looked at Prism Island across the water. Whoever was on that island, survivors, inhabitants, something else entirely. They were about to encounter their new neighbors. And we were not arriving unarmed. By sunset, my 5-person team was equipped completely. Refined iron from helmet to boot, polished and gleaming. I carried a heavy longsword. Rona had a tower shield the size of a door. Kira wore twin short blades at her hip. Zara and Bao had lighter armor with crossbows for range. I left Sarah in command of the ship with the Tide commanders holding the water around it. The rest of the crew remained as its defense. The five of us crossed to the island on the small boat and landed on a sheltered beach. We moved into the rainforest with care. I had a cutting tool from a plant specialist among the crew that confirmed no toxic vegetation in the immediate path. Structural weakness kept me reading the environment in every direction. 30 meters in, I caught movement in the canopy above. A smaller gourmet mantis dropped toward bow. Kira intercepted it before it landed, her new gear giving her the speed to match it strike for strike. I called the weak point. Rona smashed it with her shield. The three of us drove crossbow bolts into its exposed underside. Dead in under 10 seconds. The same creature that had hospitalized Kira 2 days ago could not produce a credible threat now. We had not become fortunate, we had become stronger. We pushed deeper. Spider-type and centipede-type elite variants fell to the same approach. Structural weakness, Rona tanks, Kira and Zara deal damage. Bao controls the angles with bubbles. No treasure chest drops, which was irritating. After roughly 30 minutes, the trees began to thin. Voices reached us. We moved to the edge of a clearing and crouched behind the undergrowth. Inside a rough camp, a log perimeter fence, a fire, 7 or 8 survivors seated around it gaunt, filthy, armed with stone-worked weapons, carrying the particular expression of people who had been surviving the hard way for a long time. The one in the center was a large man with a scar diagonal across his face, running a stone axe blade across a whetstone. Before I could complete my assessment, he looked directly at our position. Whoever that is, stop hiding. I can hear you. I stepped out. The team followed. The survivors went rigid when they registered what they were looking at. 5 people in full polished metal, carrying proper weapons. Against their stone tools, we must have appeared to be from a different version of the same world. The scarred leader's eyes moved across our gear without subtlety. The calculation was visible in his face. He tried to assemble something authoritative. Who are you people? This is my territory. Kaidrin name I went by when the situation called for it could not help the brief, quiet laugh that escaped him. The 4 girls at his back looked at the man the same way you look at someone who has misread the room so completely that the kindest response is silence. In a world like this one, the concept of my territory required more than a campfire and a stone axe to enforce. The scarred man whose name, as I learned later, was Brack's scar darkened immediately. The men behind him let out a chorus of low, ugly sound. Their eyes moved to the 4 girls at my back with a quality that did not require interpretation. One of them spoke before any restraint could intervene. Kaidrin's expression did not change, but something went out of his eyes like a light being switched off. Kira, he said, softly. She was already smiling with a particular quality that suggested she had been waiting for permission. Deal with him. 3 words. Understood. Kira's outline blurred. Brackscar's instincts fired at the same moment. He registered the danger a fraction of a second too late. He shouted a warning to his people that he was already too late. The loudest member of Brackscar's group had still been mid-sentence when a shadow crossed. Behind him, a single flash of light. A thin red line appeared across the man's throat. He touched it, uncomprehending, and then he fell without further sound. Instant elimination. The camp became perfectly still. Then Brackscar's face went a deep, furious red. Kill them. He raised the stone axe and charged without further deliberation. The others followed, screaming, bringing everything they had with them. They were poorly equipped, but they had the energy of people who had fought on this island long enough to stop being afraid of it. Perfect timing, Rona said, with complete sincerity. She dropped the tower shield edge first onto the ground and planted behind it like a fixed structure. 3 men hit it in rapid sequence with wooden spears and stone edges. The sounds they produced were entirely decorative. No impression was made on the surface whatsoever. Is that it? Rona said pleasantly. She drove her arm forward. The shield swung outward like a section of wall, becoming mobile. 2 men were lifted from their feet and came down without controlled landing. They did not get back up. Zara and Bao raised their crossbows. Zara adjusted her aim on Bao's quiet suggestion. The bolt landed in the outer thigh. The man fell. Bao's shot arrived almost simultaneously and struck the back. The target stopped moving. Structural weakness was live in my field of view. I moved into the center of the engagement and let the indicators guide everything. Braxcar was charging directly at me with the stone axe raised. The gap at his shoulder opened on the third step. I stepped in. Near the dead gourmet mantis, my overlord body flagged something new. I could devour monster corpses to recover strength directly. I hadn't known that was possible. I'd been thinking about this power too narrowly. The energy rush brought my stats to 24. We camped on Prism Island that night under glowing mushrooms and bioluminescent plants, cooking fish soup over a real fire, while Rona Vex and Kira Loon quietly dragged the bodies into the treeline. Sarah Vane mapped out Braxcar's intel. The Spider Queen's territory sat in a low valley, thick forest on all sides, likely guarded or trapped beyond what Brax had told us. Her plan split us in two. Rona Vex group would draw attention loudly from the front while I went around the side with Kira Loon and Zara Finn, using structural weakness to find a weak point the moment we located it. My constitution hit 27 by morning. 20 minutes of hiking brought us to a cliff overlooking a valley, and there was the colorful glass wood twisting upward with leaves like colored glass, glowing in every direction. Beneath it, a web spanning over 100 meters, and at its center, the Spider Queen. Truck-sized black metallic shell, 8 glowing red eyes, and worse, a human-shaped upper torso fused to the spider body below, a face that was almost a woman's and deeply wrong. A legendary tier boss. My first golden quality kill if we survived it. Rona Vex signal hit first. An explosion, then her voice screaming insults across the valley. The Spider Queen shrieked and sent over 100 smaller spiders rushing her position. That was our opening. I sent Kira Loon around the back while Zara Finn hit the Spider Queen with dragon fire from the cliff. It bounced off the shell without leaving a mark. Enraged, she fired toxic silk at us. I barely shoved Zara Finn clear as it burned through solid rock behind us. Kira Loon tried a joint strike and barely scratched the armor before the recoil threw her into the web, stuck. The Spider Queen's legs shot toward her like spears. I didn't think. I jumped. 27 points of constitution behind a single leap, sword raised, power charge strike fully charged, and right then structural weakness finally located it. The seam where her human torso met the spider body beneath. I twisted midair and aimed everything at that seam. She tried to block, 8 legs rising like shields, human arms reaching to stop me. But she was too slow. I merged with Zara Finn's dragon midfall, becoming a full dragon warrior, 2 top-tier talents stacked under triple damage. My blade cut through her legs like they weren't there, then punched through the seam itself. Black-green blood sprayed everywhere. She screamed louder than anything I'd heard on this ocean and thrashed wildly before collapsing. I hit the ground on one knee, completely drained, but forced myself up to retrieve my sword still buried in her. Overlord body began absorbing her dying energy automatically. Physique up 15, spirit up 30, and a new legendary skill unlocked. Spider form, letting me grow armored limbs and shoot silk on command. System notice, first person in the world to kill a legendary boss. Rewards, an epic chest, stat boost for the whole crew, doubled ship durability. Loot included a venom core, a black gold shell fragment, and a blueprint for a level 2 power core that would let our ship move under its own power at double speed. No sales required. I called Mira Loon over the communicator and told her to save her luck draw for when we got back. I had a good feeling. Back at camp, she clasped her hands, mumbled her ritual, and drew excellent great luck, the brightest result yet. The chest held a beating crystal heart, the Titan's heart, epic quality, capable of instantly leveling up the entire ship. I crouched in front of Mira Loon and reminded her of the bigger reward I'd promised. Her face lit with pure happiness. Action. The Weaver Empress thriller, horror near the dead mantis. My Titan form flagged something new. I could devour monster corpses to recover strength directly. I hadn't known that was possible. I've been thinking about this power too narrowly. The energy rush brought my stats to 24. Prompt. Vertical 9:16 manhwa illustration. Cinematic ocean fantasy lighting. High detail. Clean line art. Dramatic expressions. The Weaver Empress. Thriller, horror near the dead mantis. My Titan form flagged something new. I could devour monster corpses to recover strength directly. I hadn't known that was possible. I've been thinking about this power too narrowly. The The energy rush brought my stats to 24. Keep the exact same Aegis Prime. Time-stamped prompt Bible page 13. Character faces, hair, outfits, weapons, and body proportions from the character Bible. Negative prompt. No character redesign, no outfit drift, no extra. Limbs, no warped hands, no duplicated faces, no text, no watermark. Sarah Vane reminded me our power system was still sales, wind-dependent, with no real control. The power core needed 5 storm cores, obtainable only by surviving tidal waves. We had 1. Then Bao Lin shouted from the watchtower. Another ship ahead, in waters gone gray-white with wreckage and the smell of blood. A black hull with a wolf's head at the prow, wolf fawn. Bare-chested pirates, led by a one-eyed captain named Wang Kuai, demanding half our women and all our supplies. The crew was furious. I simply activated structural weakness on his ship. Hull badly corroded. Durability nearly gone. His talent was only C rank. A massive blind spot on his right side from the missing eye. I've been wondering where to find more storm cores. Here was the answer, delivering itself. I quietly told Sarah Vane to send in the shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Her army punched over 100 holes through the rotting hull below the waterline. Wolf Fong started taking on water fast. Wang Kuai panicked and ordered his men to hook onto our deck and climb aboard. Their fatal mistake. Rona Vex swatted the first pirate off the rail like an insect. Kira Loon appeared behind the second and slit his throat before he even realized she was there. Zarafin and Bao Lin dropped the next 3 with crossbow bolts between the eyes. They had expected helpless girls. Instead, they met a strike team. Wang Kuai went berserk. His muscles bulged, his skin flushed crimson, and he launched himself at me like a cannonball. I calmly raised my sword. His full-powered punch smashed into the blade. The recoil snapped his own arm, bone bursting through flesh. One move. I placed my sword against his throat and asked my questions. This region was called the Blood Cemetery, he told me. Killing other captains here could drop storm cores. He already possessed one, looted from the crew of a destroyed level 3 raft. When I finished asking my questions, he begged for mercy. I asked him the same question I'd asked Braxcar. Did I ever say I'd spare you? Then I ended it. The system confirmed the kill and rewarded me with the storm core, along with everything he had been carrying. Starting today, I had become the apex predator of these waters. Inside, moonlight was the only light. Zarafin crossed her arms and tried to look tough, threatening me with her dragon. I stepped closer, backed her into the corner, caught her wrist when she pushed back, and told her quietly, "For ignoring orders, you'll stay in this room tonight until you understand what being part of a crew really means." My fingers brushed against her cheek by accident. She froze instantly. Every trace of her confident act disappeared. At that exact moment, a shrill red alarm echoed throughout the Pangu. System notice, a special event has begun. Blood Moon Battle in the Blood Cemetery. Countdown, 10 minutes. The atmosphere changed instantly. Zarafin slipped out behind me, her face still burning red. For the next 12 hours, every ship in the region would have its position revealed on a shared map. Captain kills would have doubled storm core drop rates. The captain with the highest number of kills would receive a legendary chest. I still needed 4 more storm cores to complete the power core. It felt as though this event had been created specifically for us. I gathered everyone on deck. Some wanted to hide. I rejected the idea immediately. Pangu was the largest ship in these waters. Hiding was no longer an option. It was better to hunt than to be hunted. Sarah Vane agreed immediately. She opened the shared map and traced our route. 3 weak targets were nearby, all below level 5. Farther away sailed a fleet of 7 or 8 allied ships. Those would come later. Assignments were issued quickly. Rona Vex, Kira Loon, Zara Finn, and Bao Lin formed the boarding team. The remaining crew prepared crossbows and defended the deck. Sarah Vane commanded from the center with her shrimp soldiers and crab generals beneath the sea. Wang Qing handled logistics and medical support. When the countdown reached 0, a blood-red moon rose above the ocean. Beautiful, terrifying. Our first target, a level 4 raft carrying roughly a dozen survivors, spotted us and immediately tried to flee. Nothing could outrun Pangu. At 500 meters, I gave the order. 20 crossbows fired simultaneously. The battle ended before it truly began. Second Storm Corps. It felt like farming beginners while already at max level. The second raft, 15 miles away, suffered the same fate. Sarah Vane's shrimp soldiers and crab generals, followed by a rain of arrows. Complete destruction. I rammed straight through the raft as though it were nothing more than a biscuit. 2 more Storm Corps. 4 in total. Then I checked the leaderboard. First place belonged to the Blood Wolf Alliance, with 7 captain kills. We ranked second with 4, and their entire fleet, 7 or 8 ships, was already sailing directly toward us in perfect formation. Some of the girls grew nervous at the thought of facing more than 100 pirates at once. I wasn't worried. Sarah Vane calmly laid out a strategy that made use of every advantage we possessed. Bao Lin would blanket the battlefield in dense fog. Sarah Vane's shrimp soldiers and crab generals would destroy the enemy rudders beneath the water. Rona Vex and Kira Loon would defend our deck. As for me, I had something special planned. When the Blood Wolf Alliance surrounded us, their bald leader, Blood Wolf, opened with the usual demands. Hand over your ship. Hand over half your women. Before I could answer, Bao Lin did. She detonated an enormous wall of thick fog that swallowed the entire battlefield. Visibility disappeared instantly. Beneath the water, Sarah Vane's shrimp soldiers and crab generals chewed through every enemy rudder. Unable to steer, the pirate ships drifted helplessly into one another. Wood shattered. Men screamed. Chaos spread throughout the fleet. That was my signal. I activated spider form. Black armor spread across my body. 8 spider limbs unfolded from my back. I became a ghost inside the fog. Climbing silently up enemy hulls from below, I activated structural weakness to locate each captain. One after another, I eliminated them. Silent. Fast. Invisible. The pirate communication channel descended into panic. Captains disappeared in the middle of speaking. Terrified reports spread of an unseen monster moving through the mist. Blood Wolf finally ordered a retreat. Too late. When the fog slowly cleared, only his flagship remained. He stood alone on the deck, frozen in place, staring at the empty ocean where his alliance had once sailed. I appeared directly before him, sword in hand. Not a single stain marked my clothes. We had our conversation. Before the Blood Moon battle ended, Blood Wolf surrendered the 5th and final Storm Corps. System notice. First place worldwide. 11 captain kills. Reward. 1 legendary chest. A golden chest carved with sea monsters descended into my hands. I carried it back aboard the Pangu. Every pair of eyes followed me, including Zara Fenn's. She stood quietly in the corner, fists clenched, looking both nervous and excited. I raised the legendary chest slightly and smiled. Before we open this, shouldn't we settle one unfinished matter first? Everyone immediately knew who I meant. Zara Finn blushed deeply, but still tried to argue. I followed the orders. Not completely. Both of us knew the truth. I dismissed the rest of the crew to prepare dinner and led Zara Finn into the captain's cabin. Inside, I left the lights off. Leaning casually against the control console, I said nothing. Silence filled the room. It broke her much faster than shouting ever could. Finally, she spoke. What do you want me to do? I stepped closer. Placing one hand against the wall beside her head, I quietly asked her to tell me exactly what she'd done wrong. After a long pause, she admitted it. I rushed ahead. I shouldn't have. Good girl. I smiled. Then I gave her real punishment. From now on, every boss fight, you'll be the first one in. She blinked in confusion. That was exactly what she'd always wanted. Then I added one final condition. You follow every order I give. If I say retreat, you retreat, even if the boss is one hit away from dying. I looked directly into her eyes. I'm not trying to hold you back. I'm trying to make you the sharpest blade on this crew. Something changed inside her. She nodded slowly. Tears filled her eyes. I can do it. I gently kissed her forehead, then walked out of the room. Back on deck, I called Mira Loon over for the chest draw. She clasped her bamboo fortune tube, whispered her usual prayer, and drew the most unbelievable fortune yet. Divine luck. Purple light gathered around the fortune stick as if blessing the entire ship. Every wish granted. I opened the legendary chest. Golden light burst into the sky. Inside rested a skill book formed entirely from flowing seawater itself. Poseidon's wrapping. Legendary quality. A skill capable of controlling seawater within 100 meters. Water chains. Water walls. Giant hands. Any shape I desired. In a world ruled by the ocean. It was a power that came dangerously close to godhood. I learned the skill immediately. The book dissolved into streams of water and merged with my body. I slowly raised one hand. The ocean answered. A gigantic arm, made entirely of seawater, burst upward from the surface, towering over the Pangu before sweeping through the air. Every person on deck stood frozen in shock. No one could believe what they were seeing. We now possessed all 5 storm cores. Only one final material remained. The colorful glass wood, still standing deep within Prism Island, waiting to be harvested. That evening, while sharing a bottle of soda beside Zara Finn, who pretended she didn't want it, Rona Vex asked about tomorrow's logging operation. Sarah Vane immediately pointed out a serious problem. Our stone axes were far too weak to cut epic-grade timber efficiently. I opened the trading market, listing 1,000 bottles of unlimited water in exchange for 100,000 planks. Every one of the 10 daily trades sold instantly. Using the resources, I forged 41 refined iron axes. Every member of the crew received one. Effectively, at no cost. Before everyone turned in for the night, I handed Wang Qing complete control over the ship's new eco-garden. Her plant talent, dismissed as useless for weeks, finally had a place where it truly mattered. The look on her face changed completely. For the first time since boarding, she genuinely smiled. The next morning we split into 2 teams. Half remained aboard the Pangu for guard duty. The rest of us returned to Prism Island, carrying refined iron axes into the rainforest where the Spider Queen had once ruled. The colorful glass wood was breathtaking. Its trunk shimmered like living crystal. It was also unbelievably hard. Rona Vex unleashed her strongman talent, chopping nearly 5 times faster than anyone else. A surviving gourmet mantis suddenly attempted to ambush one of the girls. I reacted instantly. Using Poseidon's wrapping, I formed massive chains of seawater that wrapped around its limbs. Before it could escape, Kira Loon flashed past. One clean strike. The monster died before it even understood what had happened. By sunset, we had gathered every piece of colorful glass wood we needed. Back aboard the Pangu, I fed every required material into the blueprint. Purple light swirled around the entire ship for 10 long minutes. The materials dissolved into the hull. Then, a deep mechanical horn echoed across the ocean. The power core had been installed. The old steering wheel disappeared. In its place appeared a floating virtual control panel. Maximum speed, 40 knots. Full directional control. No dependence on wind. I touched the display and selected a destination. Twin water turbines erupted beneath the ship. The Panga shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. The crew screamed with excitement as I guided the ship through smooth turns across the open sea. It felt as though the ship had become an extension of my own body. Then the system interrupted the celebration. System notice. Second tidal wave. Arrival time. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Difficulty would scale according to our ship's current strength. The stronger we had become, the stronger the wave would become. Several girls turned pale, remembering the first tidal wave. I simply smiled. Back then, we had been nothing more than a wooden raft struggling to survive. Now, we commanded a level 6 Pangu. Armed, powerful, protected by legendary skills. A tidal wave no longer meant danger. It meant loot. Rona Vex slammed her tower shield onto the deck in agreement. Fear disappeared. Determination spread through the entire crew. Meanwhile, Sarah Vane calmly assigned every combat position, every support role, and every emergency plan. Long before the sun disappeared below the horizon, we were completely ready. 8:50 a.m. the next morning, everyone stood ready. Full refined iron armor. Weapons prepared. My attributes had risen to 45 physique and 132 spirit. The instant the countdown reached 0, a black line appeared on the horizon. Within seconds, it rose into a 10-meter tidal wave, packed with monsters far larger than anything from the first wave. I spread both arms wide. Poseidon's wrapping. The ocean answered. Massive walls of seawater erupted upward, surrounding the Pangu in a complete defensive ring. The tidal wave crashed into the barriers and stopped. The impact hurled countless monsters off the crest like rain. Many still cleared the walls and landed directly on our deck. Fire! Sarah Vane's command rang out. 20 refined iron crossbows released simultaneously. The first wave of monsters was shredded before it could organize. A giant crab-octopus hybrid burst through the barrage, swinging enormous tentacles. Rona Vex stepped forward without hesitation. Her tower shield slammed into the creature, pinning it firmly against the deck. Now, I activated structural weakness. The nerve cluster. Third pair of legs. Kira Loon disappeared beneath the monster. A flash of steel. The creature collapsed dead only seconds later. High above the battlefield, Zara Finn rode her now much larger dragon, raining fire onto every flying monster that approached. Meanwhile, Bao Lin's sticky pink bubbles trapped the faster enemies in midair, turning them into effortless targets for the crossbow squad. The battlefield looked chaotic, but under Sarah Vane's command, everything moved with perfect precision. Then, the second surge arrived, much stronger. A massive black-scaled lizard, nearly 10 meters long, emerged from the collapsing wave. Without warning, it fired a devastating beam of energy directly toward our crossbow line. I reacted instantly. A gigantic seawater hand rose from the ocean to intercept it. The beam tore straight through the water. But the brief delay was enough. I saw the opening. Its mouth, dragon fire, a thrown spear, more than a dozen arrows. Every attack struck the open mouth simultaneously. The monster staggered. That was all I needed. I launched myself into the air. The gourmet mantis blade appeared in my hand. Power charge strike. Triple damage. I drove downward with everything I had. The blade pierced through the creature's mouth, bursting out through the back of its skull. The enormous body collapsed into the sea. A storm core floated upward from the corpse. The tidal wave continued for a full hour. Wave after wave, monster after monster. The crew fought without retreating even once. Finally, the ocean became calm again. The deck of the Pangu was buried beneath mountains of monster corpses. Every single member of the crew had survived. Only a few suffered minor injuries. Nothing serious. System evaluation complete. Reward: 1 additional storm core. 1 epic chest. Cheers erupted across the ship. Everyone looked exhausted. But they were smiling, no longer hiding behind me, no longer depending entirely on me. They had become true comrades. Cleanup began immediately. Sarah Vane's shrimp soldiers and crab generals dragged the monster corpses back into the sea. The rest of the crew scrubbed blood from the deck. Repairs consumed 50,000 planks and 8,000 iron. With unlimited resources, the cost meant nothing. I praised the entire crew for their performance. But I also made sure everyone remembered one important fact. Without Mira Loon's incredible luck, without Poseidon's rapping, today's battle would have ended very differently. The crew immediately began calling her our lucky goddess. She blushed so hard her face became bright red. Later, I crouched beside her. Brushing a loose strand of sweaty hair behind her ear, I whispered softly, "Come to my room tonight. I'll teach you something. Only the two of us can learn together." Her entire mind stopped working. She stood completely frozen. Nearby, Kira Loon kept teasing her relentlessly, trying to discover exactly what I had meant that we sorted through the enormous pile of loot together. 30,000 planks, 12,000 plastic, 8,000 iron, food, monster materials, special items. Bao Lin excitedly discovered a blueprint for an automatic arrow tower, perfect for defending the Pangu during the night. Meanwhile, Wang Qing found a seed exchange card. Potatoes, tomatoes, cabbage, wheat. The crew nearly erupted with excitement. After weeks of surviving on nothing but fish and bread, the thought of fresh vegetables felt almost unbelievable. Nearby, Kira Loon discovered something even rarer beside the corpse of an elite monster. A D-rank talent awakening card. A treasure capable of granting an ordinary person a completely random talent. Without hesitation, I handed it to Zhang Xiaopeng. She had never stood out. She rarely spoke. But no one on the crew worked harder than she did. She accepted the card with trembling hands. Golden light surrounded her. Talent awakened. Foodie. The ability allowed her to detect poison instantly and improve the flavor of every meal she prepared. Not a powerful combat talent. But that wasn't the point. I wanted everyone aboard the Pangu to understand something. Hard work would always be rewarded. That night, long after the ship had gone quiet, a gentle knock sounded at my cabin door. It was so soft, I almost didn't hear it. I opened the door. Mira Loon stood outside. Her face was bright red. Her hands clutched tightly at her sleeves. Behind her, Kira Loon quickly disappeared around the corner with a satisfied grin. Clearly, she had pushed her sister into coming here. I was quietly cleaning the gourmet mantis blade when Mira Loon stepped inside. I smiled. So, you came on your own? Her face became even redder. Unable to answer, I gently took her cold hand, leading her toward the window overlooking the endless moonlit sea. The stars reflected across the calm ocean like countless jewels. I looked quietly at the water before speaking. You've always underestimated yourself. You're not just the crew's lucky charm. I turned toward her. You're my lucky goddess. Half of everything we've achieved exists because of you. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Before she could say anything, I leaned forward and kissed her. Awkward, gentle, shy. She hesitated only for a heartbeat before softly kissing me back. Outside, the Panga drifted peacefully beneath the moonlight. The night passed quietly. The next morning, I woke before she did. Smiling to myself, I lightly tickled her cheek with a strand of her own hair. She slowly opened her eyes. The memories of the previous night caught up with her instantly. Her face became as red as an apple. I laughed softly, then kissed her forehead. Good morning. At that exact moment, Golden System text appeared before my eyes. System notification. Mira Loon, pregnant. My second child. Which meant the many descendants system had unlocked. A third unlimited conversion. Holding Mira Loon gently against my chest. Watching her blush while trying to hide her smile. I couldn't help wondering, what should become infinite next? Mira came sprinting back to her cabin that morning, red-faced and laughing, dodging every question the other girls threw at her about the training session the night before. Kira caught her by the sleeve and demanded a full report. Mira just squeaked and slammed her door. Locked myself in the captain's quarters to think. The third infinite transformation slot was open, and I still hadn't decided what to pour it into. I ran through the obvious choices: wood, food, plastic, and dismissed all of them. Basic goods I could already get by trading my unlimited water and iron. What I needed was something rare enough to break the game wide open. I called for Sarah. She arrived sharp as always, already halfway into a theory before she'd even sat down a data slate tucked under one arm. She'd been tracking the global trade index for weeks, and her conclusion was blunt. Storm cores were the single biggest bottleneck in this world. You could only get them by surviving a tsunami, killing a rival captain, or clearing a rare boss. Nobody sold them because nobody had spares. Everyone needed them for ship upgrades and heavy weapons. Her point was simple. Unlimited storm cores wouldn't just put us ahead, it would let us skip entire tiers of development. We could trade them for blueprints, treasures, anything. We'd control the resource economy outright. You've got 3 seconds of dramatic hesitation left before I make the decision for you, she added dryly, and that settled it. I opened the transformation menu, selected Storm Core, and confirmed. The weight of that decision settled into my chest immediately. Then I pulled out the blueprint set I'd been saving for the Great Wall class hull, and with the cores now infinite, we finally had every material the build required. The ship shuddered the moment construction began. Purple light wrapped the hull brighter than anything we'd generated before. The crew ran up on deck and watched the Aurelia reshape itself in real time, the hull stretching to 150 meters with giving way to layered armor plate, cannon barrels sliding out along the flanks, a carved dragon prow rising at the bow. When the light faded, a dark gold fortress sat on the water where our raft-turned ship used to be. 30 cannon ports, 3 arrow towers, a mid-deck garden ring, a reinforced dragon bone hull that boosted our defense by half and doubled our ramming force. Everyone was screaming with excitement. Rona ran the length of the deck twice just to feel the new plating under her boots. I stood in the new command deck and felt the floor hum with actual power for the first time. This was a warship now. Sarah brought me back down fast, though. The ship was incredible, she said, but our food supply still wasn't solved. Petra had traded for high-yield seed cards, but growing anything worthwhile required a special living soil none of us had. Sarah tapped a region on the chart, called the Ordinary Sea, flavorless on paper, but stacked with rare resources. If living soil existed anywhere nearby, it would be there. I opened ship-wide comms. Next stop, the Ordinary Sea. The Aurelia cut through calm water like a blade, and for the first time in weeks, the crew actually relaxed. Armor came off. Tank. Tops and shorts came out. Rona fished off the rail by sheer strength, hauling up fish twice her forearm's length, and holding each one up for the others to admire like a trophy. Bow sent little bubble kites skimming across the waves, chasing gulls with them until Dot yelled at her to stop scaring the fish away. Zara promised her dragon better food at the next port, scratching under its chin while it crooned. And Mira sat under a parasol pretending to read a book she wasn't looking at, glancing at my cabin door every few minutes. Kira eventually took over the fishing line from Rona out of what she claimed was pure boredom, though her form was cleaner and her patience noticeably better. She just didn't feel the need to narrate every catch to the whole deck the way Rona did. Petra spent the calm afternoon crouched over the garden beds with a magnifying lens, cataloging which seedlings had taken to the new soil mix and which hadn't, muttering plans for expansion the moment we found the living soil she actually needed. That moved between all of them with a tray of watered-down citrus, making sure nobody forgot to drink in the heat, quietly keeping the whole ship running the way she always did without anyone quite noticing how much of it depended on her. In the corner, Kira watched Myra's flushed face with her arms crossed and her jaw tight, pretending she wasn't paying attention. She was. I could tell from the way she kept accidentally walking past that side of the deck. That evening, Lyra, the quietest of the deckhands, knocked at my door with 4 other girls, trailing behind her, all of them a little sheepish. They'd been at sea 2 weeks straight with terrible nutrition and worse stress, and now that things had stabilized, their bodies were catching up all at once. Supplies had run out days ago, and nobody had thought to restock. I hadn't either, honestly. I opened the trading market that night and searched for basic hygiene supplies. The prices were absurd, 10 bottles of clean water per pack, and the world chat was full of other captains complaining about the exact same shortage. With unlimited water sitting in my inventory, though the asking price meant nothing, I bought out the largest seller, then cleared every other listing on the board, 2 full crates by the time I was done. When I hauled the crates onto the mess table, the girls actually got a little emotional about it. Lyra hugged me so hard she nearly knocked the wind out of me. I put Sarah in charge of rationing it out fairly and told her to keep a reserve stocked going forward. It cost me a few 100 bottles of water I would never miss, and it bought more goodwill on that ship than anything else I'd done so far. Cheapest trade I ever made. Later that night, once the ship had gone quiet, I finally let myself sit with what the day had actually been. 6 weeks ago, I'd been an art student on a field trip boat, and now I was standing on the deck of an armored warship with 40-some crew members depending on decisions I was making up as I went. The system never explained why any of this had happened, why an ordinary ferry crossing had dropped straight into a world governed by captains, ranks, and an ocean that ran on rules nobody had written down for us. It only ever answered the question in front of it and left the bigger one alone. I'd stopped expecting otherwise. I checked my own status panel of habit. Physique, spirit, and command stats all ticked upward steadily now, feeding off every fight, every trade, every piece of infrastructure we built. The overlord body trait, my inherited class, whatever it actually was, kept flagging small. Bonuses I hadn't noticed before, faster stat recovery, a resistance to mental interference that had probably saved my life more than once without me realizing it. I made a note to ask Sarah to help me map out what else might be hiding in the fine print. She'd enjoy that kind of puzzle more than I would. Down on the mess deck, I could hear Rona still recounting the ship's transformation to anyone who'd listen, embellishing the size of the dragon prow a little more with every telling. Somewhere above, Kira was doing a final equipment check before turning in, methodical even, when nobody was watching. It was a strange, good kind of exhaustion. I closed the panel, banked the lantern, and let the sound of the ship carry me towards sleep. For peaceful days passed, sailing, fishing, resting. On the evening of the 4th, Sarah told me we were 1 nautical mile from the ordinary sea. The moment we crossed the line, everything went quiet. Flat blue water, flat blue sky, no monsters, no color, nothing. That absence was its own kind of warning. A full scan came back clean, nothing dangerous nearby, just a few low-level boats scattered across the water. But 30 miles ahead, a green island was throwing off a life force reading, strong enough to spike every sensor on the ship. That was almost certainly where the soil was. As we closed in, the smell hit first, clean, overwhelming plant life so strong it felt like breathing color. My own condition, sitting at 50 physique by then, let me feel something deeper underneath it, a current of raw life energy, vast enough to be unsettling. 5 miles out, every scanner on the ship died at once. Screens dissolved into static. Some field was jamming us completely. I ran a weakness insight scan on the island anyway. What came back chilled me. Asterisk dream. Garden. Status. Guardian. Dormant. A vast being rests here. Asterisk, this wasn't just an island. It was alive, and it was old, and it was far past anything we'd fought before. I called battle stations. We held the ship a mile out, weapons ready, and waited. Nothing moved. Then a voice arrived. Not through the air, but directly inside every head on the ship. Calm, amused, faintly annoyed, like we'd interrupted a nap. Asterisk strangers. You've wandered into my dream. That takes some nerve. Asterisk. Half the crew went white. Bao actually dropped the bubble she'd been idly shaping. A voice in. Your skull is worse than any monster's roar, no matter how calm it sounds. I told everyone to breathe and hold position, cracked a bad joke about talking parrots, and hoped nobody noticed my own hands weren't steady either. Whatever that presence was, it leaned on the mind like a physical weight, heavy enough that even with 130 spirit points, I felt it. Running wasn't really an option. The soil we needed was here, and I wasn't confident we could outrun whatever had just spoken. So I took a landing party, Rona, Kira, Zura, with Bao, throwing a shielding bubble over the raft as we crossed. The ground on the island was warm, almost soft like it was breathing. Vines pulled back from our path on their own. Branches lifted themselves clear overhead. The whole island seemed to be steering us somewhere. We followed the pull to a glowing lake at the island's heart. In the center, resting on a flower, built from layered light, lay a woman with hair like a waterfall of green, skin pale as new petals. Features too symmetrical to be real. My scan named her Verdana, the sleeping flower. Guardian, legendary tier. Her spirit had been damaged in some ancient conflict, and self-protective sleep was the only thing keeping her alive. The system offered 2 paths. Predatory extraction, kill her, take the material yield, and permanently strip all life from this stretch of sea. Or a bonded awakening, conditions unlisted. Killing her was never a real option. Beyond the waste, it felt wrong to end something like this. For parts, if I could wake her instead, she might actually join us, which from a purely practical standpoint was a far better trade. Behind me, Rona had gone very still, which for Rona was its own kind of alarm. She murmured that she'd fought plenty of things in her life and never once felt like the thing she was looking at could unmake her without trying. But that was exactly what this felt like. Kia didn't answer, just tightened her grip on both blades and kept her eyes moving between the sleeping figure and the tree lean. unwilling to fully trust that nothing else was watching us from the dark. Zara's dragon had gone quiet on her shoulder, wings tucked in tight, sensing something none of the rest of us could name. I told them to hold position and stay ready, but not to act unless I gave the word, whatever. It hadn't hurt us yet, and a legendary being that could have crushed our ship from Mile had instead simply talked to us. That mattered. Threats that wanted you dead usually didn't bother with conversation first. Her voice returned, softer now, tired, threading through my mind like something spoken from underwater. She explained what she was, both the island's guardian and its prisoner, wounded in a war so old the world had forgotten it, sealed in sleep because sleep was the only thing keeping the wound from finishing her. She could sense the life force moving through me, strong and unusually steady, and she asked if I would help her carry it. Not as a trick, as a trial, offered plainly, that I could accept or refuse. 3 conditions, she said, and her voice sharpened slightly with each one, like she wanted to be sure I actually heard them. First, I had to reach her fully aware of the risk if the bond failed. The backlash would gut whatever life force I offered and might not leave much of me standing. Second, I had to speak my agreement aloud, not think it, not assume it. She wanted no ambiguity in what I was choosing. Third, and this one made her voice go almost wry, I had to answer her one honest question before she'd let me near the core because she'd been tricked by clever, silver-tongued things before, and she wasn't interested in being tricked again. I told the others what I understood plainly. The island's guardian needed a partner to help her wake through a bonding rite that would draw on my own energy, and she'd laid out real terms for it. Nothing hidden, nothing I didn't understand going in. Rona wanted to come stand at my shoulder in case it went wrong. Standing closer wouldn't help, and asked her to hold the triangle formation instead, weapons up, eyes on the tree line. She didn't love it, but she held the line. I crossed the lake on a path the water opened for me and stopped at the edge of the flower. Verdana's eyes were still closed, but her voice was fully present now. Close, almost amused. Here's my question, small strong thing. If I wake and I am not what you hoped, if I am difficult or strange or slow to understand your world, will you still keep your word? I told her yes. Not because it was the answer she wanted, but because it was true. I wasn't in the business of taking things back once I'd given them. She seemed to accept that. The diamond-shaped core on her chest brightened, and she guided me through the actual working with the patience of someone who'd clearly done this before in some older age with someone else. I was to place my palm flat against the core and let my own energy flow outward at a pace she set. Not she'd pull, and I was to let her, and stop the instant either of us said stop. We agreed on that out loud too, both of us before either of us moved. The flower bud folded slowly around us as the transfer began, sealing the working away from the wind and the noise of the world. It was slow going at first, almost gentle, her pull steady and careful like she was testing the weight of what I was offering before she trusted it. Then it built, the diamond core flaring brighter, green and gold twisting together, her breathing changing as something long buried in her started stirring back to life. My own energy drained, hard toward the end, but her current reversed and flowed back into me before I hit empty, keeping me upright, keeping the exchange balanced instead of one-sided. The bud burst open an hour later in a wash of light. The output was too much for the island to hold quietly. A column of green light tore straight up through the clouds, visible for 100 miles, and the system broadcast it to every captain in the region. Unknown high tier. Energy detected. Legendary asset suspected. Coordinates marked. So much for staying unnoticed. In the last few minutes before the bud opened, I felt something in the exchange shift. Less like pouring water into an empty vessel, more like two currents finally finding the same rhythm. Verdana's voice reached me one final time before the light broke over both of us, quieter than Anything she'd said yet almost private. She thanked me, not for the energy itself, but for asking the question and waiting for the real answer instead of assuming she'd already given it. It stuck with me longer than I expected it to. Back on the Aurelia, Sarah couldn't reach me through the jamming, so she didn't wait for orders. She threw the ship straight into combat stance. Cannons unlocked, arrow towers charged. Every hand on deck armored up. Her strategic rating turned her into a cold, competent commander in about 4 seconds flat. The world chat was already boiling. Every captain within range was turning toward the beam. On the island, the light reversed all at once, sucking back down into Verdana's core like water, draining through a hole. The flower closed, then opened again. Her eyes came open, the purest emerald I'd ever seen, and she looked around at the world like she was seeing it for the first time. Then she found me. The system confirmed the bond. Awakening complete. Service contract signed, willingly on both sides. A shout cut through the quiet before I could process any of it. Ships were closing on the Aurelia from every direction. I looked to Rona, Kira, and Zara, tense weapons ready. Then to Verdana, who watched all of it with wide, newly open eyes, still working out how to hold her own head up straight. Prepare for battle, I said. Let's see what our new recruit can do. The others clearly doubted her. She looked fragile, even standing still. I didn't explain, I just asked her through the bond if she could fight. She tilted her head, working through the question like it was a new word, then raised one hand and closed it slowly toward the sky. The island answered. Vines thick as barrels, studded with metal-hard thorns, tore up out of the ground and wove into a wall dozens of meters high. Out on the water, blood-red lotus blooms surfaced, each one hiding a whirlpool in its throat. The peaceful little paradise I'd been standing on became, in about 6 seconds, the most dangerous stretch of water in the sea. The fleet that had been circling us, Karath the Bald's Alliance, already bragging over open comms about our supplies and our crew, sailed straight into it. Vines speared hulls and dragged crews under before they even got shot off. Karath himself barely got a curse out before a whirlpool folded his flagship into splinters. Not one weapon scratched the vines. What had started as their hunt turned into something closer to a verdict. From the shore, I watched 3 of Karath's smaller raiding boats try to break off and flee the moment the vines surfaced, engines screaming, and watched the sea simply close the distance for them. Men eating lotus blooms rising from beneath the hulls, mouths wide, enough to take a boat whole. It was not a fight in any sense I recognized. It was closer to watching a house fall on someone who'd wandered too close to a condemned building, thinking it was still standing because it looked fine from a distance. Rona muttered, somewhere behind me, that she was very glad to have Verdana pointed at. Other people. I didn't disagree. When it was done, Verdana pulled her power back and the island went still again, calm as if nothing had happened, except for the wreckage scattered across the water, proof it had been real. She stepped down barefoot, crossed to me, and bowed with an old, formal grace. Verdana, at your service. You kept your word. I intend to keep mine. I accepted it evenly, already thinking about how much this legendary hire had just paid for herself. The soil turned out to be the real prize. Verdana explained the entire island had grown out of her own core. Every inch of ground on it was living soil, not a patch of it, the whole landmass. I traded a seed card I'd been carrying for potato, tomato, and corn seed, and handed her a batch to test. She poured them into her palm, unimpressed, scattered them across the dirt, and raised one hand. 10 seconds later, the ground split open and produced a small mountain of glowing golden potatoes, each one bigger than a person's head. My scan called them epic tier, sacred pattern potatoes, a permanent stat boost with every serving. Rona asked the only question that mattered. Could we mass produce these? Verdana studied her own hands like she was only now understanding her new role, then bowed again. How many does the crew need? You will shapes what I grow. Rather than dig, she offered a faster method. She stepped forward, and the whole island began folding into her palm. Forest, lake, soil, all of it compressing down into a single, glowing sphere the size of coin. An entire ecosystem packed away like luggage. We sprinted back to the landing craft as the drained husk of the island crumbled into the sea. Behind us, and the moment we were aboard the Aurelia, it was gone, swallowed by the water, like it had never been there. I handed the sphere to Petra for the Eco Garden Bay. Inside it, the system told me crops would grow 1,000 times faster, with a standing chance of beneficial mutation on every harvest. Our food problem, for the foreseeable future, was solved. Petra treated the handoff like a coronation. She cleared out half the garden bay that same afternoon, muttering measurements to herself, and had the sphere mounted on a little stone pedestal before dinner. When she finally cracked it open and let the compressed ecosystem unfold into the room, the whole bay filled with the same living, breathing air the island itself had carried, humid, green, faintly glowing at the edges. She stood in the middle of it with her arms out like she'd stepped into a temple. I stood at the bow that evening and watched the sunset melt into the water, already thinking about the 4 transformation slots still waiting to be used. Wreckage from Karatha's fleet still dotted the horizon behind us, dark shapes half swallowed by the tide. Rona came up to stand beside me, quiet for once, and asked if it ever bothered me how fast all of this kept escalating. I told her the honest answer. It bothered me plenty. It just didn't stop me. Verdana settled onto the Aurelia the way a cat settles into a house it's decided to own. Within a day, she'd wandered into every compartment, asked that what half the kitchen tools were for, and informed Petra with total confidence that the Eco Garden's soil mix was adequate for amateurs. Petra took it as a personal challenge, and the two of them were inseparable within a week. Ivy, no, I stopped myself. It was Petra now. I kept slipping on my own renaming. Spent that first afternoon trying to get Verdana into something resembling normal clothing instead of her woven leaf dress. Verdana was baffled by the concept of underwear and declared, with total sincerity, that her chest preferred freedom to captivity. I nearly choked on my coffee. After a fairly undignified group effort, she ended up in a t-shirt worn backward and a pair of shorts, everything covered, dignity questionable. She picked up expressions fast, and not always the right ones. Watching Zara cross her arms and huff at something Rona said, Verdana copied the gesture with total seriousness. A moment later, twisting her own neck a little too far in the process and looking faintly surprised at herself. The deck exploded with laughter. Zara did not find it funny, which only made it funnier. When Zara stomped one foot in frustration, Verdana stomped hers too, hard enough that the steel deck actually boomed, and Zara ended up burying her red face in Bao's shoulder, complaining loudly that the goddess was bullying her by copying everything she did. Zara's jealousy, if that's what it was, showed up in smaller ways too. She spent an evening on the lookout platform carving a little wooden figure with a knife, muttering the whole time, and when I finally saw it, it was a crude stickman labeled, in her surprisingly neat handwriting, Big Soft-Hearted Captain. Her dragon nuzzled her cheek, trying to talk her down from whatever mood she was in. She swore, mostly to the dragon, that she'd prove she was the strongest one on this ship, no matter how many legendary recruits I brought aboard. Verdana, for her part, treated the whole crew with the earnest confusion of someone raised entirely by an island. She asked, without a trace of irony, whether humans photosynthesized on sunny days. She asked Kira why she carried 2 blades instead of growing extra arms, which Kira did not have a good answer for. And when Mira nervously asked whether Verdana might eventually want a family of her own someday, Verdana considered the question with the same seriousness she gave everything, and said that she supposed she would, once she understood this world well enough to raise something in it properly, which struck me as a far more reasonable answer than the question probably deserved. By the end of the week, she'd more or less adopted the eco-garden as her personal kingdom. Humming to the crop rose in a language none of us recognized, and Petra had started, keeping a notebook just to track what worked. It was against every reasonable expectation. Working out. One afternoon, I put Sarah and Verdana in joint command of the ship while I took a small party out to check a nearby reef for salvage. Sarah briefed her seriously beforehand: patrol, rotations, signal protocols, what to do if another crew got too close. Verdana listened with total focus, then spent most of the afternoon standing at the bow in an exact copy of Sarah's. Posture, arms folded the same way, chin tilted the same fraction of a degree, occasionally. Repeating, anyone who attacks this ship will learn why the flowers bloom red, in a flat, serious imitation of Sarah's command voice. By the time we got back, half the crew had picked up the line as a running joke, and Sarah pretended to be annoyed about it for exactly as long as it took her to laugh. For her part, found her footing with Verdana faster than anyone. The two of them settled into an easy rhythm in the galley, that handling technique, Verdana supplying ingredients that shouldn't have existed outside a legend, glowing root vegetables and fruit that hummed faintly when you bit into them. Never asked too many questions about where any of it came from. She just cooked, quietly proud of feeding a crew that had gone hungry more nights than any of them liked to remember. That night, I collapsed into the captain's chair, wrung out from the day. Sarah knocked and came in with hot tea, hair still damp from a bath, and started working the knots out of my shoulders while we talked through the fourth transformation slot. I floated a few ideas, rare, or better weapons, but she talked me out of all of them. We weren't short on anything urgent anymore. Food was solved, water and iron were infinite. Storm cores too. No pressing. Weakness meant no reason to burn the trump card yet. Better to save it for something that actually changed the equation. She was right, as usual, and I told her so. There was a comfortable, familiar rhythm to these late-night check-ins by then. That night, I collapsed into the captain's chair, wrung out from the day. Sarah knocked and came in with hot tea, hair still damp from a bath, and started working the knots out of my shoulders while we talked through the fourth transformation slot. I floated a few ideas, rare, or better weapons, but she talked me out of all of them. We weren't short on anything urgent anymore. Food was solved, water and iron were infinite. Storm cores too. No pressing. Weakness meant no reason to burn the trump card yet. Better to save it for something that actually changed the equation. She was right, as usual, and I told her so. There was a comfortable, familiar rhythm to these late-night check-ins by then. Sarah would find some excuse to linger a little past when the strategy talk actually ended. That night it was. A small tear starting at the ankle of her stocking, and she went faintly pink when I noticed it, before she tried to hide it. "It's nothing," she said, in the tone of someone who very much wanted it discussed. I told her I'd restocked her drawer that week. Unlimited water bought a great many things, including an embarrassing amount of hosiery, and set a fresh pair on the desk without further comment. She took an unusually long time picking it up. Neither of us ever quite said what any of this was. It didn't need saying. She lingered by the door afterward, turning the new pair over in her hands like she was deciding whether to say something else. In the end, she just thanked me for the stockings, and in a roundabout way that cost her some effort to get out, for trusting her judgment on the transformation slot without needing it explained twice. I told her that was easy. She'd earned that trust every week since the raft days, long before either of us had a warship or a crew ranking to worry about. She left with a small, satisfied sort of smile she didn't bother hiding. The next morning was for once genuinely quiet. Rona fished off the rail with a rod that looked more like rebar. Kira ran drills on deck. My physique had climbed to 65 by then, and the ship was running well, fed, armed, and stronger across the board. That cooked the first batch of golden potatoes in a huge iron pot on deck, and the smell alone pulled every girl on the ship into a line. I handed out the first bowl to Sarah, then took mine. It hit like warm, dense cream. and the system logged the gain immediately, a small permanent boost compounding with every meal. The rest of the crew didn't process the energy as cleanly as I did. Temperatures spiked across the deck almost at once. Bao's face went red as a lantern Mira started fanning herself with both hands. Zara peeled off her jacket down to a sports vest, and even Sarah looked flushed, pushing her glasses up with the back of her wrist. I told everyone to sit, breathe, and let their bodies burn through it. Sound advice that also happened to be the only thing keeping the deck from turning into total chaos. Verdana wandered through the middle of it, completely unaffected, mildly curious why everyone looked so warm, and made herself useful fanning people with a huge leaf she'd grown for the occasion. An hour later, the surge had settled, and the numbers didn't lie. Average physique across the crew had jumped hard. Girls who'd been sitting at baseline were now pushing into the low teens. Our overall combat rating climbed with them. There was a lighter side effect, too. The crew had gotten noticeably bolder around me. More teasing, more confidence, less of the shy deference from the raft days. Rona started arm wrestling me for fun and losing loudly on purpose. Kira dared me to spar with her twin blades and actually landed a hit, grinning about it. For the rest of the day, that I was still enjoying the moment when the sky itself interrupted it. A curtain of gold light rolling across the horizon, ancient text scrolling overhead. The newbie protection period had ended. 3 new systems were live, a daily mission board, a global ship power ranking, and a global crew strength ranking, both updating weekly with rewards for the top 100. I checked crew strength first. We were first. Verdana's legendary rating alone carried us there, though I knew that wouldn't hold if she ever had to fight off her home ground. Then I checked ship power, and the ground dropped out from under the good mood. We were 5th. First place was a level 8 fortress ship called the Leviathan. 2nd and 3rd were level 7. Our level 6 Aurelia looked small next to all of them. I noticed a familiar name farther down the board too, Drake Orlin, a flashy rival captain I'd traded a few smug messages with on the World Channel, sitting comfortably in the top 20 and clearly enjoying reminding everyone about it in the world chat. The crew's confidence took a visible hit. I stood up and put to them plainly, we were 5th, not 1st, and that just meant there was room to climb. Did they want to hide on this ship hoping nothing bigger ever found us, or push to make the Aurelia the actual best hull on the water? Rona punched the air. Kira's eyes lit up with something sharp. The mood snapped back hard. Sarah, ever practical, pointed out what climbing to level 7 would actually cost. Rare materials like colorful glazed timber that barely existed on the open market, all of it hoarded by captains who needed it for their own ships. The mission board was our best shot at getting any of it on a predictable timeline. I opened it and found an epic tier bounty near the top. Clear. The nest of something called the Howling Wraith. The reward included a rare material. Exchange card worth 10,000 units. More than enough to cover our upgrade. Plus a treasure chest and 1,000 points. That evening, once the numbers had settled and everyone had a chance to process the hunking, Sarah flagged him early as the type who'd sell out an ally the moment the math favored it, though she admitted he might. Just be cautious. I filed him under watch closely either way. Cobra barely spoke, and when he did it was short and needling, sizing up every other captain's crew size and gear like he was pricing livestock. Something about the way he phrased his questions made my skin crawl before I could even say why. And then there was Laughing Buddha, a bald, serene-voiced captain who talked constantly about cooperation, fairness, and shared risk, phrased so warmly that 3 other captains had already agreed to his terms before I'd finished reading the message. I met people who smile that much and mean it. He wasn't one of them. When we arrived, Laughing Buddha suggested all 8 ships anchor a mile apart and send 3 representatives each to a central meeting point to discuss terms. Reasonable enough on paper, and exactly the kind of reasonable that makes for an excellent trap. I typed one word, okay, and closed the channel. In a room full of wolves, the less you reveal, the safer you are. Back on the Aurelia, my crew was locked in. Rona kept testing her shield against the new alloy plating like it was a toy. Kira ran her blade over a whetstone until the edge threw back a mirror shine. Zara leaned against the mast while her dragon paced and growled at her feet, sensing the tension building. Even Bao practiced tougher, denser bubbles in the corner, cheeks puffed out with concentration. I checked in with Sarah at the chart table. Her report wasn't encouraging. The dive site was called the Whaling Trench, and the magnetic interference that would blind our scanning equipment completely once we were inside. Worse, every report she dug up mentioned a constant weakening field, something that drained anyone nearby just for existing in it. If my own stats got dragged down along with everyone else's, I'd lose the one advantage that had carried us through everything so far. This mission was going to be harder than I'd let myself hope. Sarah laid out what she could find on the other 7 crews, cross-referencing old world chat archives against the mission channel's activity logs. T-Rex's crew had a reputation for burning through allies fast. 3 prior joint missions, 3 prior betrayals, always initiated by someone else first according to his own account, which told her everything she needed to know about how reliable that account probably was. Old Turtle's crew had a cleaner record, oddly enough, which made her more suspicious of him rather than less. Cobra's crew barely had a public record at all, which was its own kind of warning sign. And Laughing Buddha's public reputation was infuriatingly spotless. Charitable donations to newer captains, mediation credits in 3 separate disputes, a small fan following on the World Channel who called him honest and fair. Sarah didn't buy a word of it, and neither did I. The polished ones are always the ones to watch first, she said, tapping his profile picture with one finger. Nobody gets that clean by accident in a world like this. I told her I agreed, and asked her to keep a private channel open to me the entire time we were underwater, regardless of what the mission's official comm rules said about it. She already had a half set up before I finished the sentence. I spent the last hour before we reached the site going over gear with the team one more time, less because anything needed checking twice and more because it gave everyone something to do with their hands. Bao asked, not entirely joking, whether we could just let the other 7 crews fight it out first and swoop in for the reward once the dust settled. I told her that was exactly the kind of plan Cobra was probably already running through his own head, which meant at least one other captain down there had the same idea, and we couldn't count on being the only ones patient enough to wait out. Better to go in with eyes open and a plan of our own than to gamble on everyone else being slower than us. The night before the dive, the whole ship stayed tense. Mira knocked on my door well past midnight, still in the oversized shirt I'd given her, looking small and unsettled. She couldn't sleep. The whirlpool felt wrong to her, and she was afraid her luck talent might turn on us at the worst possible moment. I took her hand and told her the truth. Even if the sky came down, I'd hold it up. She was good luck, not bad, and I meant it. Instead of sending her back to bed on nothing but reassurance, I asked her to come up to the practice deck with me. Cool night air, lantern light, and enough open space to actually move. Rona was still up doing her own drills near the bow and waved us over without asking questions. I set Mira up with a practice blade, dulled and light, and walked her through. Footwork slowly, hand guiding her wrist through the motion until she found the rhythm on her own. She was terrible at it at first, tripping over her own feet twice and laughing so hard the second time she had to sit down. I read fortunes, I don't fight, she told me, mostly resigned. I told her that wasn't really true anymore. She'd been on this ship long enough to have earned better instincts than she gave herself credit for, and had her run the same block and step sequence again. By the 10th pass, she wasn't thinking about her feet anymore, and that was the whole point. Rona wandered over halfway through to heckle constructively, correcting Myra's stance twice, with the bluntness only Rona could get away with, and the 3 of us ended up running drills Together for the better part of an hour, Myra's nerves burning off a little more with every round. By the end, she was steadier on her feet, breathing easier and considerably less afraid of tomorrow than she'd been at midnight. The system logged the session as a genuine gain. Her focus under real, sustained pressure had improved enough to unlock a latent branch of her luck talent, something called a divine sign draw, a rare chance at pulling a one-time blessing tier item. I told her that was worth celebrating and meant it. She went to bed that night worn out and pleased with herself, in a way she hadn't been in weeks. In the morning, she pulled out her draw scroll on deck in front of half the crew and shook it, with her eyes closed, still riding the confidence from the night before. The system flagged something it hadn't shown before. Her elevated focus had triggered a rare, critical roll on the divine sign talent. Light burst from the scroll, and out dropped a mythic tier item called Guardian's Hush, a 50 meters safe zone, 30 minutes long, immune to physical damage, magic and mental attack, with continuous recovery for anyone standing inside it. For a mission where death could come from any direction, that was close to a cheat code, and I told her so. She beamed like she'd won something enormous, which, honestly, she had. Kira caught me on the way out and made a dry comment about my new training program. I pinched her cheek and asked if she wanted to sign up too. She swatted my hand away, unimpressed, and reminded me we had a monster to kill. Mira found me again before we left the deck, scroll still clutched to her chest, and asked, half joking, half not, whether the divine sign meant she'd actually earned her place on this crew instead of just being lucky ballast everyone tolerated. I told her that lucky ballast didn't pull a mythic tier item out of thin air through sheer nerve, and that if she wanted proof she belonged here, she just handed it to herself. She went a little pink at that, tucked the scroll away, and didn't bring it up again, but she stood a little straighter for the rest of the morning. Rona clapped her on the back hard enough to stagger her and declared, loudly enough for half the deck to hear, that their little practice session last night had officially made Mira an honorary tank, a title Mira accepted with visible confusion and no actual understanding of what it meant, which only made Rona laugh harder. 2 days later, we reached the site at dawn, a stretch of dead gray-black water under permanent fog, the air thick with rot, faint screaming threading through everyone's skull. Without ever touching an ear, 8 ships sat around a mile-wide whirlpool like ancient beasts, facing off in the dark. The trench had a standing, weakening effect on anything living nearby. I felt my own stats sag under it, though my conditioning kept it from matching much. Some of the crew went pale immediately. At the central meeting, 20 representatives gathered on a makeshift platform of lashed driftwood at the whirlpool's edge. T-Rex turned out to be a mountain of a man, over 2 meters tall, scarred everywhere, skin showed, carrying a blood-colored axe the size of a door. Laughing Buddha was a bald, soft-spoken monk with sharp, calculating eyes that didn't match his gentle voice. Cobra was thin and pale, constantly licking his lips, sizing up every fighter, present like cuts of meat at a market. When they saw I'd only brought 2 of my own, T-Rex laughed and asked if we were here to play games. Kira answered by slamming her shield into the platform hard enough to shake the whole structure. Rona's hand twitched toward her sword hilt, killing intent locking onto him like a targeting laser. He shut up fast. Laughing Buddha reiterated his proposal. All 8 ships lower ropes together into the whirlpool, share the risk, support each other. Cobra backed him up, suggesting we anchor together at the edge. I almost laughed out loud. Classic trap. Tie 8 crews together by rope. And the real fight, if one broke out, would happen between us long before any monster got involved. But refusing wasn't a real option either. It would mark me as the outsider everyone turned on first. So I smiled, agreed, and made a note to trust none of it. Back on the Aurelia, I told Sarah everything. She called it exactly what it was, a scheme, hiding in plain sight, one that everyone at that meeting had recognized, and none of them could afford to refuse either. I gave the order to swap every rope and anchor on our side fore. Reinforced alloy kept Zara's dragon on standby for aerial support, and made it clear that if anyone tried anything, they'd learn what real firepower from the sky looked like. Sarah ran one more pass over the mission's terms while the crew prepped gear, looking for any clause we might have missed. She found something small but worth flagging: the reward. Payout was locked to whichever crew's flag captain personally struck the finishing blow, not merely whoever contributed the most damage. That detail alone explained why an alliance of 8 had ever agreed to dive together in the first place. Every one of them was betting they'd be the ones standing at the end, reward in hand, and every one of them had almost certainly already worked out how they intended to make that true. It didn't change our plan. It confirmed it. Before we lowered the ropes, I gathered my team for one last check. Rona ran her fingers along the seam of her shield, testing the alloy weld one final time. Kira had already sharpened both blades twice that morning out of nervous habit. Zara knelt beside her dragon, murmuring something low and steadying, and it settled against her with a soft, low rumble. Balpati. One more compressed bubble, small and dense, testing whether she could hold the shape under real pressure instead of open air. I told them the same thing I always told them before. Something dangerous. Watch each other's backs first, the mission second. Everything else was negotiable. The 8 ships moved into position around the whirlpool. Anchors crashed into the seabed. Thick ropes dropped into the darkness below. An alliance built on lies and mutual suspicion was officially in motion. 10 of us went down the line: Rona, Kira, Zara, Bao, and 6 volunteers with Sarah and Verdana left in command of the ship above. The descent felt like being pulled through coal tar, the screaming sharpening into something closer to a physical blow the deeper we went. At 50 meters, Cobra made his first move. His rope whipped sideways toward our line like a snake, aiming to knock my whole team into the abyss below. Kira reacted before I'd even finished processing it. She locked her legs around our line, freed one hand, and smashed her shield into the incoming rope with 5 times her normal strength. The collision boomed like a bell through the dark water. She didn't budge an inch. Cobra claimed over the comm line that his hand had slipped. Pure garbage, and everyone knew it. I sent Rona a short message instead of wasting words on him. Send him a gift. 30 seconds later, a scream echoed up from Cobra's line. One of his rear guards had lost a hand clean at the wrist. Rona reappeared next to me a moment later, her blade untouched. Nobody on Cobra's side spoke again for the rest of the descent. We reached the bottom in a huge underwater cave built around a stone platform and a cracked, ancient altar. Dozens of faceless black shadows drifted around it, wailing loud, enough to scramble coherent thought. Wailing husks, near immune to blades, weak against light and raw magic. T-Rex charged in first, swinging his axe through one like it was smoke, and got a mental shockwave back that dropped him to his knees, stumbling like he'd been drinking all night. I called Zara forward. Her dragon's lightning fire breath tore through the husks in a single pass. Physical immunity meant nothing against real magic damage, and the cave lit up like daylight. While T-Rex's side was still recovering, Rona pushed forward with her shield. Kira ghosted through finishing stragglers, and Bao locked down anything that tried to flee. We cleared our entire section without a scratch. Some of my girls were checking their hair. Afterward, 2 of T-Rex's men ended up drooling on the cave floor. Mine scrambled by. Shockwaves they never should have walked into. Old Turtle's crew handled their section competently, if joylessly, a slow, grinding defensive style that burned through husks one at a time without ever taking a real risk. Cobra's people fought dirty even against the monsters, using husks as cover to reposition closer to weaker crews rather than actually clearing them, which told me everything about his priorities before. The altar even lit up. Laughing Buddha's crew fought with an eerie, practiced calm, cutting down their share of husks with almost gentle efficiency, never once breaking that same serene smile. Watching him work, I understood why 3 captains had signed onto his plan. Without asking a single hard question, Rona leaned in close during a lull and murmured that she didn't like how quiet the cave had gone once the last husk dropped. No ambient screaming anymore, just the low hum of the altar itself. I told her that was exactly why I wanted us backed against a wall instead of standing in the open. Whatever came next, I intended for it to come at us from one direction only. Then Cobra pointed at the altar. The gray stone had started glowing with red script, ancient text flowing like something wet. My weakness insight translated it instantly. Asterisk sacrifice 8. Unyielding souls to awaken the sleeping master. Asterisk 8. Exactly the number of captains present. The entire mission had been built to make us kill each other. I opened my mouth to warn the platform. Too late. A wet, ugly sound cut through the cave. A blade through flesh. Old Turtle looked down at the golden dagger buried in his own chest. Behind him, laughing Buddha withdrew it slowly, that same fake, serene smile fixed in place. The altar needs an offering, he said calmly, bowing to the dying man. If you won't enter hell, who will? The moment Old Turtle dropped, every crew member behind him collapsed to life. Force gone in an instant. The fake alliance was dead before the blood hit the ground. I said nothing. Signaled my team back against the rock wall. Easy to defend, hard to flank. Rona planted her shield in front of us like a fortress gate. Kira melted into the shadows. Zara's dragon crackled with lightning on her shoulder, warning anyone who got too close. We watched. Laughing Buddha went after T-Rex next. Cobra slithered toward the weaker captains, picking them off with cold efficiency. Screams echoed off the walls. It was exactly the chaos I'd expected the moment I saw that altar light up. T-Rex, to his credit, didn't go down easy. He met Laughing Buddha's first strike with the flat of his axe and actually held the block, bellowing something defiant that the cave swallowed. Before I could make out the words, it didn't matter. Laughing Buddha's blade technique wasn't built for brute contests. He slipped past the axe on the second exchange, found a gap between 2 scars, and put him down with the same serene, unhurried economy he'd used on Old Turtle. There was no anger in how he fought. That was somehow worse to watch than if there had been. Bao pressed close to my side, watching Cobra work through the weaker crews with a kind of detached, business-like cruelty, and asked in a whisper why nobody down here had thought to run the moment the script lit up on that altar. I told her the honest answer. There wasn't anywhere to run to. 8 ropes led to 8 ships an ocean's length apart. The whirlpool blocked any other way out, and every captain in that cave had made the same calculation I had. Survive first, worry about escape after. Some of them just weren't fast enough, or ruthless enough, or lucky enough to make it to the second half of that plan. When the 4th captain died, the altar cracked open entirely. A freezing wave rolled through the cave, and black mist gathered above the stone, folding itself into the shape of a faceless woman trailing sorrow like smoke. The mourning wraith, epic rank and climbing toward legendary. My weakness insight came back garbled, unreadable, something that had never happened before. She killed T-Rex with a single sound, pulling his soul straight out through his own throat, and swallowing a whole. He shriveled up like a popped balloon. She grew stronger with every death. My team survived because Rona's shield blocked the physical force in Bao's bubble, absorbed the mental attack. Everyone else in the cave wasn't so lucky. Laughing Buddha's hardened body technique let him survive a direct hit, but even he lost a fifth of his strength doing it. He tried dragging the wraith toward us next, shouting for Zara to open fire, hoping to use us as cover while he slipped away. I told her to hold and wait. Then the wraith let loose her signature move, Despair Echo, a black shockwave hitting the entire cave with no way to dodge it. Laughing Buddha's technique shattered like glass. Cobra, hiding at the far edge, took the hit too and collapsed screaming. Mine scrambled to nothing. When it settled, every other captain in that cave was dead. Only my team was left breathing. The wraith turned toward us, and the pressure of her attention alone made a few of the girls flinch. My insight flagged one final warning. She was winding up a skill called ending an instant, undodgeable death judgment. There was no counter for it, except one. I pulled Guardian's Hush and crushed it without hesitation. Warm gold light expanded outward from where I stood, and the wraith's death strike hit it and simply dissolved like ink dropped into still water. Inside the barrier, nothing could touch us, and the recovery effect started, pulling color back into everyone's faces immediately. 30 minutes, completely safe while the wraith screamed and clawed at a wall she couldn't get through. We used every second of it. Sarah, tracking the fight through comms from a ship above, worked out that the wraith would hit a weak window right after her big attack, 5 minutes, where her core sat exposed. She called the play. Zara opens with dragon fire to crack the shield. Rona holds the front. Kira finds the cut. Bao locks down the field. As the barrier's timer ran low, the wraith was already visibly spent, her form flickering. When the shield dropped, Zara let everything go at once, compressed fire and lightning, punching clean through the wraith's core, tearing her mist form open. I closed the distance for her. The finishing strike, my blade forged years back from the shell of a gourmet mantis and never once dulled since. And then, right as it came up, she stopped fighting entirely. The rage went out of her all at once, replaced by something closer to relief. Her faceless head turned toward me, and a small, tired voice reached into my mind. "Kill me," she said. My blade froze mid-swing. For a long moment, nobody in that cave moved. Even Rona's shield lowered a fraction, like some instinct in her had recognized this wasn't a fight anymore. Not really. The wraith's mist form drifted, ragged where Zara's fire had torn through it, and the sound in my head wasn't a threat this time. It was closer to a plea from something that had been carrying a very old weight for a very long time and had simply run out of road. I didn't answer right away. My insight was still reading garbled static off her, but something in the tone had shifted enough that I risked a direct question instead of a killing stroke. What was she before the altar, before the 8-soul ritual had twisted her into whatever this was? The answer came slow, fractured, like she was dragging the memory up from somewhere buried, under centuries of the same interrupted despair. She'd been bound to this trench long before any of us existed, sealed to a duty she never chose, feeding on captains sent down by a ritual none of the actual victims had designed. She wasn't hunting us. She was doing the only thing the binding allowed her to do, over and over, for longer than any of us could really picture. Sarah's voice crackled in through the private line, quiet and urgent. The barrier's aftereffects were fading fast, and whatever I decided, I needed to decide it in the next handful of seconds, before the trench's ambient weakening field caught up with all of us again. I looked at the exposed core, still pulsing faintly where Zara's attack had torn it open, and at the ragged, tired shape hovering above it, and made the call. Not a killing stroke, a binding strike instead, the kind meant to sever a compulsion rather than end a life, aimed at the ritual thread still, tethering her to that altar rather than at whatever remained of her underneath it. Whether it would work was not something my system could promise me. I swung anyway. The binding strike hit true. The ritual thread snapped with a sound like a rope giving way under too much weight, and the morning wraith's form convulsed once, twice, then began folding in on itself, not dissolving, not dying, just settling, the way smoke settles when the wind finally stops pushing it somewhere it never wanted to go. What was left when a mist cleared wasn't a monster at all. It was a woman, hollow-eyed and exhausted, kneeling on the cracked altar stone like she'd just set down something impossibly heavy after carrying it for longer than she could remember. She didn't attack. She didn't run. She looked at her own hands like she barely recognized them, then looked up at me with an expression that had nothing left of the wraith's rage in it. My insight finally returned to clean reading. Name unknown. Status changed from hostile to undetermined, ritual bindings severed, class and abilities currently unstable. Whatever she'd been before the altar claimed her, some piece of it was still in there. Rona kept her shield up anyway, and I didn't blame her. Kira circled wide without lowering her blades, but nobody moved to finish what my strike hadn't. The woman on the altar, I still didn't have a name to call her, asked in a voice raw from centuries of screaming, how long? It had been since the last binding. I told her I had no idea, that we'd only just found this place, ourselves, and that the 8 of us who'd come down here were, as far as I could tell, the only living things left in the cave. That seemed to land harder than the fight itself had. She asked about the altar, whether it still stood, whether the ritual could be triggered again by some other captain foolish or desperate enough to try it. I told her the truth. It was still standing, cracked but intact, and I had no intention of leaving it here for the next crew to stumble into the same trap we almost hadn't survived. She agreed, quietly, that it needed to be dealt with, and volunteered with the flat, practical tone of someone offering the one skill she actually had left to help me bring it down from the inside, where centuries of forced servitude had taught her exactly where its foundations were weakest. We spent the better part of an hour working the altar apart together while Sarah coordinated the extraction topside and the rest of my team held the perimeter. When the last support cracked and the whole platform collapsed into the trench floor in a slow avalanche of stone, the ambient screaming that had haunted the water since we arrived finally, genuinely stopped. The silence afterward felt cleaner than any silence had a right to feel that deep underwater. Getting all 11 of us back up the line took longer than the descent had. Mostly because nobody entirely trusted that the trench's weakening field wouldn't try one last trick on the way out. It didn't. We surfaced into gray dawn light with the other 7 ships' crews nowhere in sight. Dead, fled, or still down in the dark, and I wasn't inclined to go check which. The mission board updated itself the moment my team cleared the water. Bounty complete, soul claimant, full reward issued. 10,000 units of rare material exchange credit, an epic treasure chest, 1,000 points, and, tucked in the fine print I almost missed, formal recognition of a new crew member, added automatically the instant the woman from the altar stepped onto the Aurelia's deck under her own power. Sarah met us at the rail with a dozen questions already lined up and visibly holding back a dozen more out of basic courtesy. Verdana, of all people, was the one who broke the tension. She took one look at the newcomer's hollowed, uncertain expression, recognized something of her own first days awake in it, and simply took her by the hand and led her toward the garden bay without asking permission from anyone, muttering something about warm soil being good for whatever ailed a person. Nobody argued with her. Nobody usually did. I stood at the helm that evening with the exchange card in one hand and the weight of everything we just survived settling somewhere behind my ribs. Level 7 was within reach now. The materials for the upgrade sat in my inventory, real and countable no longer. A number on a ranking board mocking us from a distance. Somewhere out there, 7 other crews had learned the hard way what happens when you build an alliance out of convenience instead of trust. Somewhere out there, a Leviathan-class fortress and a captain named Alida were still sitting comfortably in first place, entirely unaware that the gap between us had just gotten a great deal smaller. Sarah found me there a while later, 2 cups of something hot balanced in her hands, and didn't say anything about strategy for once. We just watched the last of the fog burn off the water together, the Aurelia riding low and steady under a crew that had, against every reasonable expectation, made it through one more impossible day intact. A burst of laughter filled the cabin, and the atmosphere lightened. After that, Kaidrin opened the last reward, the epic treasure chest. Blueprint, alloy ram, excellent grade. Installs at the bow, significantly increases collision damage and structural strength. Skill book, iron will, excellent grade. Passive, increases mental resilience, and resists mental control effects. Storm Core X2. Kai-Dren decided to keep the Iron Will skill book for himself. His physical strength was always climbing from his overlord body, but mental defenses were a gap he needed to close. With all the loot processed, he turned his full attention to the next upgrade for the Pangu. Ship upgrade requirements. Pangu, level 6 to 7. Wooden plank 200,000, iron block 80,000, storm core. 10. Life-breathing soil 10,000 secured. Mermaid shell powder 10,000, refined oil 5,000, demonized. Whale oil 1,000. So many. Zara stared at the list. Where do we even find the last 3? The soil is handled, Kai-Dren said. The rest we buy through the trading market. He opened the captain's trading market and searched for mermaid shell powder. Only 2 listings both. At eye-watering prices, one demanding an entire excellent grade equipment piece for 100 units of powder. Are these people insane? Zara clicked her tongue. Trading 100 units of material for a piece of blue equipment. Kai-Dren shook his head. Normal. The production method for materials like this was extraordinarily rare. Specialty of some specific sea area. For captains who urgently needed it to upgrade, it was a necessity. We aren't short on basic materials. Sarah, you handle operations. Use pure water or other materials to sweep the market. Don't worry about price. Sarah nodded and got to work. Within half an hour, the market had been methodically cleared. Refined oil and demonized whale oil were secured. Only the mermaid shell powder remained. We may have to collect it slowly over the next day, Sarah said quietly, reviewing the transaction records. Notarus. Kai-Dren waved a hand. He had the resources, and his patience was solid. Then, from the lookout tower, Mira Loon's voice, laced with surprise, came through the ships. Communicator. Captain, look quickly to the front right of the ship. There's something there. Everyone walked out onto the deck. On the blue, sparkling sea, about a nautical mile to the front right, a group of strange creatures was breaking through the water surface and rapidly approaching. Their upper bodies were female in form, with long hair of vivid, varied colors. Their lower bodies were massive fish tails covered in brilliant scales. Mermaids. A large group of them, at least 30 or 40. A chorus of gasps swept the deck. My God, real mermaids. Are they attacking us? Don't be hasty, Kai-Dren said immediately. He used the captain's appraisal to scan them. All names appeared green, neutral, no hostile intent. They had simply been drawn here by something. The mermaids stopped about 100 meters from the Pangu, observing the steel ship with curiosity, exploration, and a hint of caution. Their leader had long, seaweed-like blue hair, an exquisite face, and a noble bearing, like a queen. Her gaze swept over the crew and settled on Bao Lin, who was at a loss in the crowd. The queen parted her lips, and an ethereal, melodious voice resonated directly in everyone's minds. Humans on this ship, are you the ones singing the ancient, lost lament of our tribe? The ethereal voice sent ripples through every heart on the Pangu. All eyes went immediately to Bao Lin. Bao Lin startled and instinctively shrank behind Kai-Dren, her small hand nervously clutching the edge of his coat. He patted the back of her hand to calm her, then stepped forward. As captain, he needed a handle. This, a companion on my ship, learned this melody by chance. We mean no harm to any of you. We are merely passing through. The mermaid queen, azure eyes deep as the ocean, studied Kai-Dren for a long moment. She could feel the vitality within him, vast as a scorching sun, with even a faint touch of divine power. Her weariness eased slightly. Her gaze moved back to Bao Lin, and her tone softened. Human, do not be afraid. That elegy is the requiem of our ancestor, the siren. It has been lost for nearly 1,000 years. We only followed the song to find out how you came to know it. Kai-Dren understood at once. The siren's tear inheritance. He explained briefly, omitting the quest details. In battle, saying only that through a stroke of fortune, Bao Lin had received a gift from an ancestor. The Mermaid Queen and her people behind her all showed expressions of understanding, then sorrow. To think that the remnant soul of our ancestor Siren had turned into such an existence. She sighed softly, then placed a hand over her heart and bowed to Kai Dren and Bao Lin in elegant, ancient salute. Thank you for allowing her to find final peace and liberation. I am Lillian, leader of the Azure Song tribe of this sea area. As a token of our gratitude, we are willing to fulfill one reasonable request. Queen Lillian, we don't require any reward, Kai Dren said politely, then changed his tone. However, our ship's upgrade does require a special material called mermaid shell powder. Lillian tilted her head. You must mean the starlight coral powder our tribe uses to polish weapons and build homes. When ground down, it does resemble shell powder. She took a pinch of white powder, emitting faint starlight from a small shell pouch at her waist. Kai Dren used the captain's appraisal. Starlight coral powder, mermaid shell powder. Exact match. We need a large quantity. Would you be willing to trade? A flicker of curiosity crossed Lillian's azure eyes. Do humans have anything the Azure Song would need? We live in the deep sea. The things of land are both foreign and distant to us. Of course. Kai Dren reached into his pack and withdrew a basketball-sized, entirely golden potato emanating an enticing aroma and immense life energy. The epic grade golden light, sacred powder potato grown by Petra. The moment it appeared, every mermaid's eyes went wide. What kind of fruit is this? It smells so good. A young mermaid whispered, unable to stop herself. Swallowing. Kai Dren explained, a potato grown on their ship's farm. He cut a small piece and offered it to Lillian, encased in seawater. She hesitated, then tasted it. The potato melted in her mouth, and a warm current spread through her body. An earthy sweetness and massive life energy she had never experienced before, making her almost sigh aloud. Delicious. Her beautiful eyes lit up instantly. I'd like to trade this food for your starlight coral powder. What do you think? Before Lillian could respond, the mermaids behind her erupted in excited chatter. Lillian's face reddened slightly. She silenced them with a look before turning back to Kai Dren with as much queenly dignity as she could muster. We can trade one such potato for 100 units of starlight coral powder. Is that acceptable? 1 for 100. Kai Dren almost laughed out loud. This was practically a giveaway. It took Petra about 10 seconds to grow a single giant potato. He feigned contemplation for a moment before reluctantly nodding. Fine. Since you are descendants of the Siren, I'll accept this price. He had Petra grow over 100 of the golden potatoes on the spot. When the mermaids watched Petra wave her hand and an entire small mountain of potatoes grow from nothing on the bare deck, their collective worldview shattered. They looked at her as if gazing upon a deity. In the end, Kai Dren traded 300 epic-grade potatoes for everything the mermaids carried. 20,000 units of mermaid shell powder, plus bonuses of deep-sea pearls and nerve-soothing seaweed. The mermaid shell powder was finally secured. After seeing off the enthusiastic Queen Lillian and her tribe, the Pengu's deck erupted in celebration. Captain is incredible. You even found a seller for something this rare. We're getting a level 7 ship. Kai Dren didn't delay. He went straight to the captain's cabin, opened the construction interface, confirmed. All materials had turned blue, and pressed the upgrade button. All required materials confirmed. Beginning Pango upgrade. Level 6 to level 7. A 7-colored light, more dazzling than anything before, instantly enveloped the entire Pangu. The hull vibrated within the light, making sounds like bones being reshaped. Everyone was gently lifted and suspended in the air as the transformation unfolded beneath them. The ship expanded, length and width both growing visibly. Simple wooden structure gave way to a strange alloy shimmering with metallic luster. On both sides of the gunnel, brand new mana cannons with pitch-black muzzles generated themselves and pointed into the distance. The alloy ram fused into the bow and became something larger and more ferocious. The process lasted 10 full minutes. Pangu successfully upgraded to level 7. Length increased to 160 meters. Width increased to 60 meters. New. Mana Cannon X-20 Primary Energy Shield. Captain's exclusive cultivation room. All base ship attributes. Increased twofold. Primary Energy Shield. Continuously consumes storm core or demonized whale oil to form a protective energy barrier against attacks. Captain's cultivation room. Built-in time acceleration significantly, increasing cultivation efficiency. Before Kai Dren could even explore the new features, a notification sounded for everyone on deck. Warning, your ship is about to leave the normal sea area. In 30 seconds, you will be teleported to the Styx Sea Domain. This is a high-risk sea area. Prepare accordingly. The Styx Sea Domain. As the countdown reached 0, the space around the Pangu was violently twisted by invisible hands. When the prismatic light dissipated, a nauseating smell of blood rushed in. Bao Lin, who had been enjoying the view on deck, clutched her mouth and gagged. Everyone looked up and fell silent. There was no blue sky, no white clouds, no sun. Above them hung a dark red firmament, so oppressive it felt only a few hundred meters overhead, its clouds resembling clumps of congealed blood, slowly writhing. Below the ship, an endless sea of blood. The water was terrifyingly calm, viscous, heavy, and the color of dark red Venus blood. The entire Pangu seemed to be sailing atop a mountain of corpses. Is this the Styx Sea Domain? Sarah adjusted her glasses, the lenses reflecting an eerie red light. Her tone was more solemn than Kai Dren had ever heard it. The air has high humidity and is slightly corrosive. Everyone try not to stay exposed on deck too long. Petra, crouched by the gunwale, poked the red seawater with her finger, shook her hand in disgust, and looked up with innocent confusion. The water here looks like it tastes awful. Kai Dren walked to the bow, brow furrowed. Then the grand notification sound chimed. Styx Sea Domain Rules. Rule 1. Faction Confrontation. All captains in this sea area are automatically assigned to the outsider faction. The local power is the Styx Guardian Army. Both sides are mortal enemies. Conflict ends only in death. Rule 2. Military Merit. Outsiders who kill Styx creatures or destroy local vessels receive Styx Military Merit, exchangeable at the Styx Divine Palace for materials, blueprints, skills, talents, or even lifespan. Natives who kill outsiders receive Styx Blood to enhance their own strength. Rule 3. Mutual Aid. Within this sea area, all outsider ships are prohibited from attacking each other. Violators will be swallowed by the Styx. Unite against the enemy. Now, for survival, let the slaughter begin. The sea area channel was already in an uproar when Kai Dren opened it. Captains shouting about native fortresses, legendary skill books costing 1,000,000 merits in the exchange shop, and the general fervor of people who had just arrived in a new killing zone. Kai Dren posted a brief message. Newbie here. Could any veterans explain the situation? The channel went silent for 2 seconds, then exploded. Multiple captains recognized the Pangu, #1 on the global crew ranking, now also a level 7 ship. Offers to team up flooded in. Then 2 captains with golden leader prefixes spoke up. Braxcar, one of the Styx Society's presidents, introduced himself directly. His co-president, Garrick Mauld, added context. The Styx Society was the largest outsider alliance in the sea area, currently at a stalemate against the native Styx Guardian Army. They had level 8 fortresses and possibly level 9 strongholds. They needed a third leader. They were offering that position to Kai Dren. Kai Dren waited. Joining to gather intelligence and use the alliance's rules made sense. And they were offering leadership. No reason to decline. All right, send me the coordinates. He entered the coordinates, told Sarah to set the course at full speed, and the Pangu hadn't been sailing 10 minutes when Mira Loon's alarm came from the lookout tower. Captain, 5 ships to the rear right, very fast, heading straight for us. Kai Dren pulled up the rear view image. 5 strangely built vessels closing in a pincer formation. Their hulls were pieced together from giant skeletons, surfaces covered in writhing flesh and membranes. The sails were massive, tattered bat wings. The bows were carved with agonized, wailing human faces. Enemy detected. Styx Patrol Squad. Elite. Ship levels. Level 5x2, Level 6x2, Level 7x1. Status. Pursuing. Note, bloodthirsty lackeys of the Styx Guardian Army. Their goal is the annihilation of all outsiders. A Level 7 leading the group. Kai Dren raised an eyebrow, and instead of concern, a smile of interest appeared on his face. Just in time. Let's test the Pangu's full combat power, and let our new friends see what we can do. Prepare for battle. Sarah's calm voice spread through the ship via the internal communicator. The girls on deck moved to their battle stations without panic. On both sides of the Pangu, the covers of 20 mana cannons slid open automatically, dark muzzles beginning to gather deep blue energy. Zara licked her lips with excitement. Perfect timing to test the cannons on these things. The 5 bone ships drew closer. The leading level 7 bone ship had 2 crimson lights flare in the eye, sockets of its bow statue, and an invisible sound wave mixed with mental shock swept toward them like a tsunami. Kai Dren felt nothing himself, but some of the girls on deck showed pain on their faces, going pale. Bao Lin. She reacted immediately. Puffing her cheeks, she drew a breath, and an ethereal, distant song flowed from her throat. The inspire effect of charm, sound song, washed over the entire ship like a clear spring, banishing the mental discomfort and lifting a buff of 20% to all attributes across every crew member. Activate the energy shield. A layer of pale blue, nearly transparent energy enveloped the entire Pangu, countless tiny hexagonal grids flowing across its surface, beautiful in the way that only things combining technology and magic can be. Almost immediately, the enemy's second wave. From the 4 level 6 bone ships, dozens of bone cannon, barrels extended and sprayed dark red, viscous liquid. Where it hit the sea, white smoke rose in holes, corroded instantly into the blood-red water. Corrosive attacks. Dozens of streams hit the Pangu's energy shield. Ripples spread across the surface, flickering where struck, then stable. Report. Shield energy at 3% reduction. Replenishing from storm core. The energy bar returned to 100%. Keep sailing. Ignore them. Kai Dren's voice was flat. The girl at the helm stared. No dodging, no counterattack, just taking it? Trust the captain, Sarah said, with absolute calm. And so, the massive Pangu ignored concentrated fire from 4 ships behind it and continued unhurriedly toward its destination. The enemy ship's combined assault washed over the energy barrier like rain against stone. The Styx patrol fleet was thrown into confusion. On the leading level 7 bone ship, the Styx Guardian Army captain, cloaked in black robes, only crimson, eyes visible, let out a raspy, disbelieving roar. It had never seen a level 7 shield withstand this. Normally, 3 minutes of concentrated fire broke any barrier at this tier. But this ship had been sailing under bombardment for 5 full minutes, and the shield hadn't dimmed at all. Increased firepower. The captain took personal control of the giant bow statue. Its mouth opened, and a dark purple energy ball, compressed from countless resentful souls, began rapidly condensing. A level 7 ship's full power strike. Captain, the enemy flagship is charging its ultimate. Zara warned. I see it. Kai Dren nodded without urgency. Perfect. Let's show them the meaning of despair. He glanced at Sarah. She understood and issued the command through the communicator. All mana cannons. Target the enemy flagship. 3-round volley. Fire. 20 cannon muzzles had already locked on. Boom, boom, boom. 20 thick blue energy beams tore through the dark red sky. 20 spears of judgment crossing several kilometers in an instant, perfectly covering the level 7 bone ship that was still charging its attack. First volley. Hull shield shattered like a crushed eggshell. Second volley. The beam struck the bone-in flesh. Hull, directly. Massive bones turned to powder, flesh scattered. Third volley. All 20 beams converged on a single point, the power core. The level 7 bone ship exploded midair, a massive purple fireball. Wreckage and corpses rained into the blood sea. Kill notification. 1 level 7 Styx Guardian Army Captain killed. 10,000 Styx military merit gained. 1. Level 7 Styx warship destroyed. 100,000 Styx military merit gained. A level 7 ship instant killed. The remaining 4 level 6 bone ships were terrified and immediately turned to flee. Zara, the rest are yours. You got it. Zara fused with the baby dragon, transformed into Dragon Maiden, and launched. A dragon roar shook the sky, and a thunderfire dragon breath obliterated the first fleeing ship. Under her relentless pursuit, the remaining 3 fell within 5 minutes. The Styx military merit leaderboard surged. In one engagement, Kydrin had shot from 0 into the top 10. The sea area channel erupted in shock. Braxcar's message came through immediately. Well done, brother. Kydrin replied briefly and closed the channel. Effect established. On the Panga's deck, the girls celebrated. Only Petra, staring at the burning wreckage in the distance, tugged Kydrin's sleeve and asked with genuine confusion, "Master, why aren't those bone ships moving anymore?" Kydrin rubbed her head gently. "Because they were bad people, and we broke them." "Oh." Petra nodded, half understanding. "Then, are we good people?" "Of course. All of you are good people," Kydrin said. "As for me, strictly speaking, not quite." 2 hours of sailing later, a sea city formed from hundreds of giant ships linked together appeared on the horizon. The Styx Society's headquarters. The Panga docked smoothly into the Styx Society's temporary port. As newly appointed third leader, Kydrin received the highest reception. Braxcar, nearly 2 meters tall, built like a siege weapon, with an SS rank berserk talent, was exactly as his reputation suggested: bold, direct, and unfiltered. Garrick Mauld was the opposite: refined, gold-rimmed glasses, SS rank mental type talent, meticulous and responsible for alliance strategy. After a short meeting, Kydrin had a solid picture of the Styx Society. Roughly 80% of the outsider captains in this sea area, 3 level 7 ships, over 30 level 6, and countless smaller vessels. Several engagements with the Styx Guardian Army had resulted in a stalemate. Night fell over the blood-colored sky. The Styx Society headquarters blazed with light and noise. The Pangu, docked in its exclusive berth, was quiet and separate from it all. Inside Kira Loon's room, the sports committee member sat cross-legged on her bed, wiping her precious dagger. The door opened. Mira walked in carrying a plate of sliced fruit. "Kira, you're still at it? Have some fruit and rest." Mira set the plate down, leaned closer, and a faint, familiar scent reached Kira's nose. Warm, distinctly masculine. Kira's hand stopped on the blade. She looked up. Her twin was different tonight. Cheeks a healthy pink, eyes shimmering, some indescribable charm in the set of her brows that hadn't been there this morning. Kira's brows furrowed unconsciously. "Sis, come here." Mira sat down on the bedside, confused. Kira leaned in without warning and, like a puppy investigating something, sniffed at Myra's neck. Mira went rigid and scarlet instantly. "Kia, what are you doing?" "Don't move. There's the captain's scent on you." Not a question, a statement. Myra's heart lurched. Her eyes darted in panic. No way. I just finished bathing. It's the body wash." "Body wash?" Kira's lip curved. "We use the same peach-scented wash. The captain uses mint. Do you think my nose is decorative?" Everything was clear now. Kira leaned back against the headboard, arms crossed, watching her sister burn. With embarrassment. "Be honest." Myra's voice, when it came, was nearly inaudible. "It's what you think. When, just now." Kira had been fearless since childhood. Fighting, sports, adventure. But romance between men and women had always been a blank in her life. Now, watching the change in her sister. Something cracked in that solid middle wall of hers. Look at your pathetic state, Kira muttered, her mind in chaos. She waved Mira out of the room. Alone in the dark, she tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Her mind kept replaying Myra's shy, satisfied expression and cutting to Kai Dren's face, that ever-present easy smile. A fierce competitive urge bloomed, wild and unstoppable. Why could my sister and not me? She sat up abruptly. The clock said nearly midnight. He'd still be in the captain's cabin reviewing the route. She slipped out of her room like a thief and went to Myra's door. Mira was already asleep. Kira's gaze landed on the white shirt hanging on the rack. Kaidrins, washed clean by Mira. A bold plan formed. She took the shirt, returned to her room, and put on the oversized white shirt. The hem just barely covered the base of her thighs. She looked at herself in the mirror. Still sharp eyes, still short hair, but the oversized shirt added a softness she'd never associated with herself before. Here goes nothing. She walked barefoot across the cold deck toward the captain's cabin. Standing at the door, she could clearly hear her own heartbeat. She raised her hand to knock, hesitated. Her competitive spirit won. She closed her eyes, imitated Myra's soft manner as best she could, and knocked lightly on the door. Captain, are you asleep? Inside the captain's cabin, Kai Dren was studying the Styx Divine Palace exchange list Braxcar had sent. A dazzling array of legendary grade items that made his eyes heat up with want. Then, a soft knock at the door, followed by a carefully lowered voice. Captain, are you asleep? Kai Dren's movement stopped. His eyebrows twitched. He recognized the voice almost immediately. She was trying her best to imitate Myra's manner, but the hidden stiffness in her tone told him exactly who was standing on the other side of the door. Kira Lun. What kind of role play was the sports committee member attempting at midnight? A hint of amusement flashed in his eyes. He played along, stood up, and opened the door. Outside stood a girl looking quite striking. She was wearing his oversized white shirt, the hem just long, enough to cover her thighs. With her neat short hair, she was currently trying very hard to perform Myra's fragility, but the awkwardness and barely contained nervousness in her eyes were impossible to hide. He nearly laughed out loud. This wasn't a little white rabbit in rabbit's clothing. This was a wildcat who'd forgotten to hide her tail. It's Mira, Kai Dren said, deliberately pausing before saying the sister's name, and stepped aside to let her in. Kira's body went rigid. He didn't recognize me? I actually got away with it? She lowered her head, imitated Myra's small steps, and walked into the captain's cabin. Captain, it's so late. You're not resting yet. She kept up the squeaky voice. Yeah, studying the route. Kai Dren replied casually, closed the door, and walked up to her. He raised one hand, naturally and gently, hooking his finger around her slightly open collar. Your collar is messy. Kira's heart flew into her throat. His fingers were warm and dry, just that light contact against her collarbone sent a shiver through her. Your face, why is it so red? His fingers slid down to her burning earlobe, lightly pinching it, his voice dropping lower. Do you have a fever? Kira jolted like she'd touched an electric wire and lurched back a step, bumping into the cabinet behind her. I'm Phoenix. As soon as the words came out, her real voice, clear, athletic, carrying a hint of her usual edge. The air froze. Her face turned scarlet. She wanted to dissolve straight through the deck. Oh, Kai Dren watched her humiliated, furious expression and finally stopped pretending, letting out a quiet laugh. So, it's not Mira. It's our esteemed sports committee member. Not sleeping at midnight. Wearing my shirt. Imitating your sister's voice. Standing in my room. Student. Kira Lun. What exactly are you trying to do? I was just passing by. I saw your light and came to check. Is that so? He stepped forward. Kira stepped back. Her back hit the cabin wall. Nowhere to go. He extended both arms, planted them on the wall on either side of her. The distance between them was inches. Every competitive instinct in her refused to let her look away. What do you want to do? I want. He leaned down to her ear and said each word slowly, just for the two of them. Kira's mind went completely blank. Seeing her tough exterior and completely unraveling interior, the amusement in Kai Dren's eyes deepened. Since you can't say it, I'll assume you came to give me a good night greeting. He stepped back. Before she could react, he reached out and ruffled her short hair, natural practiced, completely unbothered. Kira froze. You. But Kai Dren had already turned away. He took a thin blanket from the storage locker, walked back, and draped it over her without a word. The nights in this sea zone are freezing. Don't catch a cold. Then he sat back in his chair as though nothing had happened and went back to the sea chart. All right, go to sleep, sports committee member. There's plenty to do tomorrow. Kira stood there completely dazed. He just let her go like that? A shame and indignation far worse than the wall slam surged through her. Kira gritted her teeth, tore the blanket off, and strode back to Kai Dren, looking down at him from her standing height. Kai Dren. First time she called him by his full name. He looked up. She slammed both hands on his armrests, leaned down, pressing her face inches from his, eyes blazing with stubbornness and something she hadn't noticed herself. I'm asking you, between me and my sister, who is prettier? Facing the question that was essentially a death trap, Kai Dren simply looked at her. He watched her eyelashes tremble slightly with nerves, watched the flame burning in her eyes. He didn't answer. Instead, he raised one hand and lightly tapped his index finger against her tightly pressed lips. Shoo! Kira's brain short-circuited entirely. His fingertip carried a faint coolness, but where it touched it felt like an electrical current. That stubborn pride deflated by more than half in an instant. I'll answer that question when you're no longer like this, wearing someone else's clothes and asking questions you don't really mean. He withdrew his finger, draped the thin blanket over her again, and then patted her on the back. This time, Kira didn't resist. Like a deflated balloon, she gave him one long, complex look, then clutched the blanket to herself and practically fled the room. Kai Dren shook his head with a quiet laugh. A prickly little wildcat who explodes at the slightest touch. The next morning, the atmosphere on the Pangu was strange. At the dining table, Mira kept stealing glances. At her sister, then at Kai Dren, her eyes full of confused worry. Kira buried her head in her food the entire meal, not making eye contact with anyone, though the red tips of her ears said everything. After breakfast, Kai Dren received a communication from GIRLS.My. GIRLS and Braxcar were planning a war meeting about their next strategic objectives. Location: Brax. Scar's flagship, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. 10 of the strongest Level 6 ship squadron leaders in the Alliance would also attend. Kai Dren gave a few instructions to Sarah, Rona, and the others, then took a small boat to the Tyrannosaurus Rex alone. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, with a massive steel vessel of violent aesthetics, hull covered in thick ramming, prows and gun barrels, looking like a steel beast ready to devour everything. Pure attack power was probably even higher than the Pangu, but the Panga's advantage was the infinite shield, defend and fight, simultaneously, never worrying about energy consumption. The meeting room was already full. Braxcar leaned against his chair, massive frame, wild appearance, radiating a pressure that made the air dense. GIRLS.My was the opposite, composed and refined. 10 Level 6 captains sat below, each an owner of their own ship, each clearly a powerhouse. Eyes full of scrutiny when Kai Dren walked in. Kai Dren sat in the lead position without hesitation, equal footing with Brax and GIRLS. I'll be direct, GIRLS said, activating a projection device at the table center. A 3D map of the sea zone appeared, with one coordinate point marked prominently. Here, coordinates 3681, -1120, is the largest Styx Guardian Army military fortress in the Southwest Sector, the Blood Sea Fortress. The projection zoomed in. A massive black fortress, large as a mountain range, built entirely from unknown black metal and enormous skeletons, with countless menacing turrets shrouded in a dark red energy shield. Blood Sea Fortress. Threat Assessment. Fortress level 8, pseudo. Garrison, roughly 3,000. Styx Guardian Army members, 10,000 skeletal soldiers. Ships, level 7x5, level 6x24, level 5x237. Defenses, 420 blood vessel turrets, 150 bone catapults, 10 Watcher's Eyes. Core, Blood Sea Heart, powers the entire fortress and emits a persistent weakening aura. Commander, Grim Warden Valdrek. Local hero, SSS rank talent, Blood Monarch, strength unfathomable. The sound of sharp intakes of breath filled the meeting room. A pseudo-level 8 fortress? An SSS rank commander? 5 level 7 ships? A captain exclaimed. How do we fight that? Are we just supposed to charge and head first? Brack Scar slammed the table. Stop panicking. Wealth is found in danger. Take that fortress and the military. Merits and materials inside could upgrade one of us directly to a level 8 ship. At that point, our outsider faction owns a true ocean stronghold. Who would dare touch us? Greed reignited in their eyes. Dangerous, yes, but the rewards were equally real. Garrett cut in smoothly. We won't charge blindly. The fortress is powerful, but not invincible. The key is the Blood Sea Heart. Destroy it, and the entire fortress loses power. Shields and turrets go dark. That's our opening. Easier said than done, said a cold captain with the call sign Scorpion. How do we get past the level 8? Shield and 10,000 defenders to reach it. Garrick smiled, and his gaze turned toward Kai Dren, who had been sitting in silence. That will depend on whether our new Panga leader is willing to help. Every eye in the room turned to Kai Dren. Kai Dren's fingers tapped lightly on the tabletop, expression unchanged. Leader Garrick, you want my Panga to act as the target? Garrick smiled warmly. Captain, you're overstating it. This isn't being a target. It's being the only viable. Tactical core. He turned to the room. You've all seen the Panga's record. A level 7 ship withstood concentrated fire from 4 level 6 ships and 1 level 7 ship simultaneously, and its shields didn't move an inch. My plan is simple. The Panga leads at the front, drawing all fortress battery fire. In the ideal scenario, Captain Kai Dren sustains an absolute safety zone using his shields, giving the rest of us a protected output window. We concentrate our entire firepower on a single point of the fortress shield. Constant dripping wears away stone. Even a level 8 fortress shield will eventually tear. Once a gap appears, Braxcar leads the elite assault. Fleet through to destroy the Blood Sea Heart. When the heart falls, the battle is decided. Dead silence in the room. The plan was bold to the point of madness. Its entire core rested on the Pangu, and on Kai Dren's willingness to be the shield for 800 ships. Garrick Braxcar said, this plan puts all the pressure on our brother Pangu. If his ship can't hold, we're all finished. I trust Captain Kai Dren's strength, Garrick said. He looked at Kai Dren. Am I right? As one of the leaders, you should rightfully shoulder this responsibility. An open scheme dressed up in righteousness. Refuse and his prestige as new leader collapses. Accept and he bears the greatest risk. Whether my ship can hold is my concern, Kai Dren said finally. His tone was flat. You've spent a long time on the plan and my responsibility. I like to know how the gains are distributed. If the rewards were worth the gamble, manageable. If not, no. Braxcar and Garrick exchanged a glance. Both saw the same thing in each other's eyes. As long as he's talking about benefits, there's room. 3 leaders each take 10%, Brax said. Remaining 70 is distributed by contribution. Since the Panga has the primary role this time, 20% for you as priority. Garrick and I take 5 each. Remaining 70 distributed to all ships by contribution level. Anyone object? 20% of a level 8 fortress's total haul. Everyone in the room knew they would work harder than they'd ever worked and still walk away with a fraction of that. But none objected. Without the Pangu as a meat shield, none of them even had the right to approach the fortress. No objections. Kydrin stood up after a moment of reflection. Then it settled. When do we move? The reason he agreed. The benefits were massive. Yes, the risk was high, but he was genuinely confident. With the Infinite Storm Core as his trump card, that said he needed to upgrade his shield before going in. More hull defense, more insurance. Also, and this was worth noting, while it seemed like he was bearing the greatest risk, he really wasn't. If the shield genuinely couldn't hold, he could simply withdraw. The one truly at risk was Braxcar, who would have to lead a direct charge into the fortress interior once the shields were down. And Brax was getting half of what Kydrin was getting. Since Brax had no objection to those terms, Kydrin certainly didn't either. One wave of resources and military merits from this could get the Pangu to level 8. The sooner the better, Garrick said, a sharp glint in his eyes. Dawn, the day after tomorrow. Tonight, everyone prepare. Get your ships to peak condition. Done. Kydrin returned to the Pangu after the meeting. The giant steel vessel was quiet, a sharp contrast to the clamor of the Styx Society headquarters outside. Sarah Vane had been waiting in the captain's cabin and handed him a cup of warm coffee the moment he stepped in. Everything arranged? We move at dawn the day after tomorrow. He took a sip of coffee and briefly recounted the meeting. Sarah's elegant brows furrowed slightly. The plan demands too much from the Pangu. The firepower of a pseudo-level 8 fortress. Even with infinite storm cores powering it, the shield's structural strength may not withstand that level of instantaneous burst damage. She'd reached the same conclusion he had. The Pangu's shield advantage was sustainability, not absolute defense. So, I need to upgrade it before the battle. I want an epic-grade shield enhancement blueprint. Blueprints of that level almost never appear on the market. And if they do, the price is astronomical. Astronomical? Kydrin smiled. Sarah, have you forgotten we have infinite resources and Petra, who produces epic-grade food? Meanwhile, the Styx Society's war preparations had already caused chaos on the World Channel. All materials related to attack, defense, and repair spiked in price and were swept from the market within hours. Kydrin posted one message. 100 epic-grade golden potatoes, seeking epic-grade shield blueprints or leads. Epic-grade food. 100 of them at once. The trading market went momentarily silent, then exploded in private messages. Kydrin filtered for keyword, blueprint. One message caught his eye. A seller with a hidden ID. They had a blueprint, the stick barrier, epic grade, a shield enhancement, designed specifically for the Styx C domain environment, greatly increasing resistance to mental attacks and corrosive energy. Price, 1,000 epic potatoes. 1,000. Kydrin sneered internally. He typed back. He didn't have 1,000, but he had the 100 plus 10,000 iron blocks. Deal. Long silence on the other end. Then, 20,000 iron blocks plus the 100 potatoes. Deal. Kydrin agreed instantly. This much in resources was nothing to him, especially since he discovered a market exploit. Basic materials like iron blocks could be packed in his sacks for trading, turning the daily 1,000-unit limit into 100,000-unit batches in one transaction. The seller's reply. They clearly hadn't expected immediate acceptance. They initiated the trade. Done. Blueprint acquired. Styx barrier, epic grade. A masterwork from Styx craftsman. Grants your ship's shield an additional solid physical barrier, greatly enhancing structural strength and energy resistance. Upgrade requirements. Life-breathing soil, 10,000. Refined petroleum, 5,000. Demonized whale, oil, 5,000. Styx vengeful soul stone, 100. Upgrade effects. Base shield strength plus 300%. New trait soul guardian. Shield blocks an additional 50% of mental shock damage. New trait energy solidification. Energy consumption increases by 30% when shield is under attack. Good stuff. Kydrin called Garrick Mauld immediately. I have the shield blueprints. I'm a bit short on rare materials, though. On the other end, silence. Then we'll gather them now. Under 10 minutes, Garrick and Brax had pooled everything and sent it over. To them, as long as this battle could be won, materials were trivial. Upgradable ship component detected. Consuming materials to upgrade primary energy shield. Around the Pangu's hull, the previously invisible energy shield began to flicker with a faint, eerie blue glow. The glow flowed and condensed, crystallizing on the hull's surface into a translucent shell resembling black crystal, covered in mysterious flowing energy patterns, as if the massive steel vessel had donned a suit of indestructible armor. Upgrade complete. Primary energy shield successfully upgraded to Styx Barrier Epic Grade. Everything was ready, only waiting for dawn. Time passed. At the dawn of the appointed day, the blood-colored Styx sea domain was already saturated with a murderous intent before the sky had even lightened. Over 800 ships, large and small, form an unprecedentedly massive fleet, cutting through the dark red waves toward the Blood Sea Fortress in the southwest. At the very front, 3 Level 7 vessels. Brax-Scar's Tyrannosaurus Rex, Garrick Mauld's Infernal, and at the very tip, Kydrin's Pangu. The black crystal barrier reflected cold luster in the dim morning light, silently proclaiming the role it was about to fulfill. On the lookout tower of the Pangu, the sea breeze cut sharply, whipping the hem of Kydrin's coat. Binoculars raised, he stared at the horizon, where a black silhouette crouching like a giant beast was already vaguely visible.